Alrighty, I am here, and my music's loud. Hold on. At least it's loud for me. To know if it's loud for everyone else. Okay. There we go. Yeah, hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Today is a day. It's Thursday. That was the day. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I think up till this very moment, I think I'm going to work on this. But I kind of don't. Like, normally when I look at a painting like this, I'm like, okay, I kind of know what I would do. This just feels like I'm just going to render the same thing that it is. And, like, I don't like that. I want there to be ideas and things to change. I guess I could change some of this stuff and, like, add something more important up here. That could be kind of fun. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of, I like this painting, which is why I wanted to work on this one. But oh gosh. Maybe I do work on it. Maybe I paint on it for a bit, and if I want to deviate from that and do something different, then I'll do that instead. Hi, Joe, you forgot to turn on the camera. I have. Also, I forgot to open up StreamerBot with the chat. So if anyone on YouTube says anything at any point, I can actually read them. So let's do that first, and then I'll turn on the camera. I guess I can turn on camera now. Doesn't. It's not exactly difficult to do that. Okay. There's that. Commissar Skull, how are you doing? Hope your day is going well. If you guys don't know Commissar Skull, he also streams on Twitch. You should follow him on Twitch. I'm only saying on Twitch because right now there's basically nobody here, and so anybody who ever hears this will probably be on YouTube as a VOD. I don't even know if people watch the VODs, but there we go. Shoutouts in the first 10 seconds of stream probably aren't the most effective shoutouts. So yeah. You have an appointment with a doctor in an hour. Ooh, that sucks. I mean, maybe that's good. Is that good or bad? I don't know. Hopefully you figure out... Hopefully you get only good news. Don't need to shout... I know. I don't need to shout anybody out, but I do it because there's people who stream and they're cool. So, just to check. Nice. Okay, so what do I want to do? I could work on this one. This one feels a little generic. This one feels like it has more potential. To see if you're okay after 10 years, I see. Which do I want to work on? I don't think I know people were like, oh, I really like the blue one. That, to me, does... I don't know, it just doesn't... It's not fun. Paint. This feels fun. Maybe it's because, like, this is more orderly, and it's hard to paint stuff that's orderly and not have, like... I don't know, painting, like, chaos and ruins and... You know, just like random nature stuff, that's so much easier. To do like architecture and have to figure out design, and then like the design can't just be a cool design, but like what is this building, that matters. Whereas I feel like a field of flowers is like, okay, it's a field of flowers. What is this field of flowers? It doesn't matter. It wasn't designed, right? It's like, it can just be a field. This has to be a space. So like every building has an identity that I need to figure out. And it's, maybe it's because it's harder, but it also isn't as fun. Whereas this is fun to work on. So I think I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with the... Start painting this. I think that's what I'm going to do. I don't know if this is a good idea. We'll see. It's kind of fun. At the very least, I think I'm going to be able to explore some fun stuff. What is happening? Wait, oh, there it goes. Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun painting. I don't know if I'm going to work on it the whole stream. Because it kind of doesn't need it, in a way. Like, it sort of kind of holds on. I don't know. But I might explore. I might explore some with this, because this is if we end up adding this to the world building project or the world map or whatever I want to call it, um, there is that like magic source. Yeah, so I like this because I like the brushwork, and also I think the brushwork works with like making this stuff look like it's marble, right? Like this looks like stone, like it already looks like stone, and these like grooves here, even though they're just purely sort of random brush strokes, they already make it feel like there's contours, which is interesting. Like something, yeah, I might want to add some story point of interest. Yeah, I was thinking about this back here as like some sort of large temple-y area off in the distance. Could be something like that. I don't know. Someplace. And these would be some massive stairs leading up to it. Go like that. I mean, it adds a little bit. It's still not quite what I would call a point of interest, or at least not, not quite what I'm, you know. It's probably not good enough, but it works. But it would be kind of fun to add, like, something about the ruins. Some soldiers were crushed, yeah, maybe. Although I'm thinking maybe more ancient, so maybe not, like, recent. I don't know. I was thinking about, because this has like magic and stuff, it'd be kind of interesting if these things were like, I don't know, like some sort of runes or glyphs or something to show that like these are, I don't know, maybe they're like batteries, right? Maybe what if this was a literal like well, not like a giant battery. I'm on a separate layer, I think, yeah. Sci-fi style. Like glowing thing with sort of Atlantis movie. Yeah, a little bit Atlantis. A little bit Atlantis. Yeah, I like that. I like I love that actually. Yep, Atlantis. Yeah, a little bit Atlantis with sort of like ancient tech, but sort of long forgotten. I mean, to be fair, there's about a million things that are not Atlantis that are basically that premise, right? Like long, ancient, forgotten tech. Um, but yes, Atlantis is the sort of maybe not origin, but certainly the most popular early story like that. It'd be curious, man. I feel like I know writing and published work. Like if you go far back enough, it's hard to like have a lot of published writing. So you didn't have like big novels and stuff. Um, but like, surely there was like Atlantis wasn't the first, right? Like surely this concept of these lost high-tech civilizations, like surely that was a thing as long as like oral storytelling has existed, you know? Um, I feel like there's probably so many cool fantasy and sci-fi type stories just lost to time. I don't know. Kind of crazy to even think about. But yeah, these are just like ruins. And I don't know if I like that. We've got to do something. I also want to keep. Maybe I'll play around with some multiply layer real quick, just while I'm noodling. Oh, I just realized oh, I still didn't bring up my proper streamer bot chat. A broken statue. Yeah, broken statue, broken columns of things. Yeah, there absolutely could be statues that are broken. Definitely. That's actually true. The statue is good. The idea of statues are good because I can design the statues, and so there's like a little bit of world building in there. I don't actually think I want to do this, but I'm just seeing what it would look like if I basically am darkening up the occluded areas. So this is full brightness, but like I'm not actually gonna have it this dark. But this darkness, right now, if I repaint the light, that darkness is acting as like the occluded areas. So like in here, I can leave that stuff dark. Or maybe a statue that withstood the chaos, maybe. Maybe. Do I like the foreground bright? I kind of don't, right? Surely the brightness is better in the middle. Hold on, let's rework some stuff before I get ahead of myself. Like, surely this brightness is better. You gotta go, you'll be lurking. Alright, take care. Thanks for popping in. Hope you have a good day or good stream. Are you streaming right now? I don't actually know. If you're gonna go stream... Oh, wait, no, you said you have an appointment. Never mind. You're not streaming right now. Best of luck at your appointment. Doctor. Yeah. See ya. Okay, maybe this. No, that's terrible. I don't know. I'm just playing around. I kind of, I mean, I dare say I almost like it the way it is, just very loose and mysterious with a lot of, it's very open-ended. You know, there's no, there's a lot of room for interpretation. Because it's very just abstract. Big blobs, lots of big shapes. I'm just trying to play around with adding more lighting in the middle here. And then that way I can fill up this spot. Because I don't think I want the light in the direct foreground. I think I'd rather have the light in the middle of the painting. I mean, they're different, right? Because, like, if you... Just from, like, an emotional sort of design... Is that a word? Emotional design? I don't know. Like, going from the shadow to the light is going to be, like, a different vibe, right? It's going to make you feel a different thing. Right? Whereas, like, you're crawling out of a cave or something. That's very different than, like, stepping into a shadow of ruins where there's all this, like, destruction. And it's like, okay, this is kind of sketchy. Like, now we're going into the shade. I kind of like with the light being on it, though. I think that's better. I don't need it to feel like it's sketchy. I just want it to be, like, illuminating the grandiosity. Is that a word? That's a word. I want to illuminate sort of like the statues, if there are statues in here, and the pillars and the columns, right? Like, that's the stuff that I want to show. I think that's the stuff I want to show. And then this stuff, go like this. Don't know if I want to do that. Yeah, I'm pretty certain I don't want this stuff in the foreground. I think here. Something like that. I'm sort of repainting this a bit. It may not look good here, but that's okay. A lot of this is, like, I'm okay with having to repaint it. I don't want to settle on the first thing that I come across just because it sort of kind of looked okay. That's something that I still need to get better at. I don't know. I assume I'm not the only one who does that, like, in existence. Where, like, you do a thing, and it starts to look good, and you suddenly have, like, this, like, your brain shuts down, and it's like, oh, good enough. And it refuses to, like, keep ideating and keep playing and experimenting, because you're just like, oh, good enough, and you don't want to... It's hard to go back. It's hard to, like, erase it and paint over it, and... I can't be the only one who's ever experienced that, obviously. But that's a thing that I do struggle with. Like, I do it to a point. Like, I feel like I'm pretty good at doing some iterations and working through stuff until it's better, but not until it's good, like, as good as it can be. I still stop a little early. Like, I'm probably not the worst at this. There's probably people who, you know, get very attached to their very first idea and refuse to do anything other than what first came up in their head. I'm not that bad, but I do sometimes struggle with, like I think especially if I think there's a bit of, like, a limitation with, like, my art skill, kind of. So, like, if I'm struggling with something and I end up getting it right, because I put in a lot of effort to get it right, it feels like I need to, you know, keep it, because the amount of work to do something over and also then have to go, you know, through that struggle again. Whereas if, like, I feel like certain things, if I could get them quicker, I think I would be more happy with scrapping them because I didn't spend so much time. Which, obviously, I want to get better at not caring about that, because who cares how much time I spend? If it's not good, it's not good, right? But there's still, I still have to fight with that part of my brain that, like, can recognize that I've invested time and energy, right? Like, I know better, and it's a thing I actively talk about quite often, but it still affects me on some level. It's like, it gives me a bit of, like, a moment of pause. Like, I don't know, like, before you... Gosh, I'm sure there's an analogy here where, like, you're gonna do something that is scary, but you have to, like, talk yourself into it, and then you do it anyway. But, like, there's still that moment where, like, you have to remind yourself that, oh, you should still do this. And I'd like to get to the point where I just do it, and I don't have to think about, oh, I gotta remind myself that I'm, you know, like, I should restart. Or, I don't know. It's kind of a tricky thing, I think. But yeah, I'm thinking there could be some fun designs on this that kind of at something. So I guess I can give some context for anybody popping in and is not, there's a little unsure of what I'm even talking about or what we're doing. So I started actually, you know what? I can just show my Instagram post I made today. But basically, I'm starting, like, a little world building project where there's a map, and as I paint environments like this, I will add them to the map as little icons. So, for example, one of the ones we've done, which was the very first one. This one, I will add it to the map in like a little icon, right? Also, this is a zoomed in version, but it's more or less all I have. So yeah, there's this, and then like there's little areas like this and these, and all of these spots are locations that I painted, and then they make their way around the map as little icons. And as I paint new environments, I'll add them to little areas. So like maybe there's ruins and like some sort of foothill areas, maybe over here. Maybe there's just some old ruins. Maybe they're over here or something, where like they're on the far end. You know, this is where our main civilization is. And so maybe we have, you know, across the desert, up in the little foothills, there's these little ruins and stuff, and maybe it's an important point. Maybe there's something there, you know, some important geological or archaeological site or something. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Also, I'm not sure if I like how this is working. How would one map? I don't know what that sentence means. How would one map? How does one make a map? How does one navigate a map? How do you start in terms of like an art project map? Like, oh, crap, I just asked. Okay, you said yeah. To which one? How do you make a map? Start. So I'm taking it piece by piece. I'm taking it piece by piece in the sense that it's a work in progress. There is no, like, I don't have an end goal. It's purely about the process. I did add some initial, like, random, you know, shapes that were cool. And I came up with some very simple constraints, like half is in light, half's in shadow, and that's like fixed. It's not, there isn't a day-night cycle. But you don't even need that. Like, it could just be, you could literally start, I mean, I think that the key is that you have to allow yourself to revisit it. Because I think it can feel, are you going to do the other 3+ sides, do you think? Maybe. Probably not. Maybe. Also, yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I think it's super important with a project like this that you allow yourself to revisit it, because you can't possibly know what it's going to look like in the long run. And it's funny because I think a map is almost like an analogy. I mean, it is the project that I'm working on, but also it's almost an analogy for other projects where, like, just like human history, it builds up over time, and, like, you know, countries change, and as, you know, like, it, you know, it's not built in a day. What's the saying? Rome wasn't built in... And it's kind of that, right? I think you really do. And so for me, like, I'm allowing myself, you know, I can add a river here. If I want to erase, if I want to put a river through this mountain, I can do that, right? If I want to put a couple little islands over here, I can add those. I can add anything. So none of this is set in stone. The only thing that's sort of fixed are the things that I add to the map. So if I decide that they're, you know, this is in the desert and it's right here, well, technically I could even move this, right? I could just pick this up and move it. Maybe I decide that it should be down here in the south. You know, if there's no reason that the desert can't change, I could add water here, right? None of that's fixed. There will be a time where I decide that it's fixed, right? For example, like, I don't know, let's pretend I decided that there was, you know, a river that came up to this area, and there was little towns on the side, and these people would have boats, and they would take the energy crystal and they would ship it down the river, okay? Well, once I decide that, this needs to be connected to a river, right? I've created a constraint for myself, right? I have to connect this to this somehow because I've decided that's how it is, right? But up until that point, I can move it around and rework things, and I'm not precious about it because I don't really know where it's going. But I can still spend time, you know, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how other people make maps. I think I think the starting conditions kind of don't matter, right? I mean, take actual human history, right? you could start with one big continent, and then you could start making up, oh, I'm going to have two big nations that are competing, the Fire Nation and the Water Tribe. Okay, not literally Avatar: The Last Airbender. But, you could just say two big nations are competing, and, maybe you decide as you're designing these cities or whatever on opposite ends of this map or continent. Here, why don't I sketch it out, right? So what if you did something like this? So you could literally start with, maybe you want it to be in water, and then there's an island, and so you just make a big shape. Here's the shape of the island. Maybe it has some lakes in it. Again, maybe the lakes don't matter. Maybe some bodies of water. Maybe there's a river dividing it in half. It doesn't matter. Right now it looks stupid. That's fine. But once maybe at some point we decide that again, there's two cities or something, and maybe you have a really cool idea for one of the cities. Maybe you don't know what any of this is about, right? But you have one really cool idea, and this idea, then once you figure out this and you kind of know what it stands for, maybe you make its polar opposite, right? Maybe something up here, you design another city, and maybe you at some point decide that there's going to be some history and they have a giant war, and maybe it's, I don't know, you decide as you decide stuff, right? Maybe you decide that there was a nuclear war or some major thing that broke the earth and it split the two, and now you move them into two separate continents. Well, now you have two continents, right? And you've designed through sort of storytelling of how they're going to be, right? Maybe you decide that they're going to be two separate parts, and so they'll be connected, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. Maybe that will make it more interesting, so we kind of, design it in a way that looks like they could fit together. And then, okay, so now we have two continents or something. And maybe this continent is, maybe they have a mascot, say a dragon or something, right? Dragon. And so maybe you're like, okay, well, what if I made this part of that island kind of sort of look like a dragon, right? Like, what if I, gave it some teeth or something, right? Just as little islands. It doesn't have to be super on the nose, but something like this. And then, maybe there's the eye of the dragon here, little lakes. And then what if this one was some other thing? It had a different mascot for this city, and it looked like, I don't know, something else. And it's silly, right? But the point is, I don't know what this looks like yet. But as you develop lore and as you develop where things are, if you draw a coastal town, you can, hey, Pavik, how's it going? Then you can draw cities on the, I think this is a good, I don't know. I think this kind of project is really, how do you word it? Because it's potentially, the resolution is so big, right? You could zoom in forever, right? And you could, not literally, but you could zoom in and say, oh, there's a city here, right? And then there's another town. Oh, I can't draw. There's a city here, and oh, there's another town here. And if we zoom in, we can see the roads. And you can never know what everything looks like, right? And so I think it really is a good example of it's about the process and not the end, because you can't possibly know everything about the end, right? The literal roads on the map. How are you ever gonna know that, right? At some point you just, and also there's a little bit of nature, right? Nature can be kind of random, and it feels undesigned. And I think a lot of that, I think I could have more or less just started with a randomly generated map from a map generator online for D&D. But then as you start telling your story, and maybe you decide, let's say you got a random map. Here, let's do it. Random generated map. Random D&D map generator. Because obviously you might want to paint your own map, but I think the starting point doesn't matter. What is this? Okay, here. Look, this is a random fantasy map generator. Hopefully it doesn't lag my computer. But I have a point I'm trying to make with this. So if I hit refresh, it's going to give us a new map. Okay, so let's say we just plop ourselves right here, right? We don't need the names. We can scrap all that. Let's just print screen, grab that. Doesn't matter what it is. But let's say you're adventuring, right? You're in your own little world, and you are, you decide that you're over here. Just again randomly, you decide that you're here, and let's say you want to, say that you're near the ocean, and on the ocean, again, we're not really looking at the map. We're just telling a random story. But maybe there's a lighthouse, right? And it sticks out in the water. Well, here there isn't a spot for it to stick out. So, like, maybe we just make it stick out. And then we put the lighthouse here, right? And, like, now there can be this little, like, thingy that sticks out. This little peninsula thing where the lighthouse is. And it's like, okay, it wasn't on the map, but who cares? Because it fits our story. And if our story is that our characters are going to walk along this long stretch of land and get to the lighthouse, right, then that would make sense. So we put the lighthouse there, right? However lighthouses look. And then this, like, there's a lot of, it doesn't matter where you start. It's more about you tell the story or come up with an idea and you add it. And I think that's what I'm doing, so it doesn't really matter. Like, none of this may look anything like that by the time you're done. Maybe you decide that later this is actually the most southernmost point, and so you want to just chop all this off. Okay, great. Now we have a new map, right? And maybe it's, there's another one on the opposite end. I like to do things in duplicate. So maybe there's another little point up here, and maybe they're connected through a long river. I don't know. Does that even make sense? Sure. Right? Like, again, it's sort of like by the time we're done with this, it won't be recognizable. I don't know. I think that's very much an analogy for any, like, idea building, right? Where you start with a random idea that doesn't have to be good. Like, I want to design a character. And then the character is like, it's going to be a police officer. Great. That's not a cool character, like, it's just a police officer, There's millions of them that exist in the real world. What makes it unique? I don't know. Haven't decided yet. Well, then you start designing the police officer. And you're like, okay, well, I don't want this police officer to look like a normal police officer. Let's give them some distinguishing marks. Maybe they have, maybe their hat is particularly weird. And then you start iterating, and by the time you get done, they aren't even a police officer, right? They're not fighting crime, they're doing crime, and they're not, they're not, I don't know, the point is you just don't know where it's gonna end, right? You don't know. I think that starting point is less relevant, and the ending point is, it's the process, right? The process of turning it into a thing that's good. Anyway, that's how I think about it, and I think the map project is very, is a very, almost like not symbolic of it, but it's very representative. Gonzalez Art Corner, hello, first time chatter. Casey sent you. Casey's great. Thanks for popping in. How are you, Gonzalez? But yeah, I was just rambling about, somebody asked how do you, like, start a map or make a map? And this is not finished. This is not finished. I have a long way to go. Very much a sketchy work in progress, as you can see by the lack of detail. But yeah, I think that kind of thing, I'm learning this firsthand, because, like, people have repeated the sort of, oh, you just focus on the journey and not the end result, right? Not the destination. People have said that so many times, but, like, I think there's a point where when you're doing a project, especially if it's big at all, you can't focus on the end result. It's literally impossible, because you don't know what that end result looks like. It's too big to envision, right? I think there is I think when you're doing small projects, you can tell yourself, oh, I'm focusing on the process. But you're not. Like, it's still like, I'm going to paint fan art of Batman looking forward at the camera. And, like, what it's going to look like when you start. You might tell yourself, oh, it's the process. But like, it might not be. I don't know. That's something I'm kind of figuring out firsthand. Is like, until the project's sufficiently big enough and you don't know where it's going to end, it really does feel like, okay, well, now I get it. Yeah, it's like a rough sketch. But I think it's very, it's an analogy for like any sort of design, right? Where like you just start somewhere and then you develop it by doing the work. You start making things up and you start asking questions and you start putting in time to figure out the problems, and then you solve the problems, and then you eventually it ends up being something different. I don't know. Like, I think that's how a lot of projects go. Right? Like, if you imagined you're, I don't know, writing a book, you probably know the general plot. Like, I know the plot, right, of my project. I know it's going to be a world map. That's the plot, kind of, right? Or not the plot, like the main, the vibe, I guess. But, like, I don't know every character, and I don't know every line of dialogue, and if there's a personality of one of the characters that comes through later, like, I don't know for sure all that. Like, you haven't written it yet. And at some point, you just have to start writing it, and you might get a better idea for certain things as you write. I don't know, and that's how I think painting is a lot of times. Also, pardon me just sitting here chatting. Changing things around while you push the product forwards is always a good thing. It's great to set boundaries and rules for yourself. It's also good to push against them and even break them as you follow the needs. It's good to set boundaries and rules. Yeah. I agree. I mean, and I think I probably struggle a little bit with the not or giving myself firm enough boundaries, because I think sometimes my boundaries are too loose. Like, because like sometimes it's hard, right? Like when you have a boundary and you start to, brush up against it, and it's sort of, you're like, I know this is good, but it's really hard. But it'd be easier if I just changed it a little bit. Like sometimes I'll just like, I go the easy route because I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like I did something cooler and easier, but it's not as, it doesn't force me to solve problems as much. I don't know. Sometimes I struggle with that bit. I can take the easy way out. But yeah, I think it's a balance. You gotta. I feel like you probably learn it depending on the project. It depends on what you're doing, I guess. I don't know. I always remember that. I think it's a stupid story, but I always remember that story of like Steve Jobs, and it's like over. I'm sure it's oversimplified and probably not even true, but like where he takes like a big computer, he tells his engineers like, I want all of that in this little box, and they're like, sir, that's impossible, and he's like, well, do it anyway. They're like, it's stupid. It's a stupid story, but there is a point where you're like, okay, this actually isn't gonna work. Or maybe you push through and it eventually does work. Like, how do you know which one it is? And there's something to be said about being a little bit like stubborn, but there's also something to be said about pivoting to a better idea if you stumble across it and recognizing that. Strange Dino Cell, hello. So yeah, yeah, I don't know. But I think for me, the biggest thing that I'm learning with sort of doing any sort of project really is just a matter of like, don't be so like fixed on where it's going to end up. Just focus on making good choices along the way. And if it ends up somewhere else and you come up with a good idea, then so be it. You struggle with that too. I think when I set boundaries for myself, it helps to not get lost in the endless lands of ideation. Yeah, I think for me, the boundaries have to be like guidelines and not. I don't know. Like I think sometimes, and I mostly see this in others because it's easier to see stuff in others than it is in yourself because it's very easy to be tunnel visioned. or like blind to your own faults, I guess. But I think what I see in some other people is oftentimes when people do set goals for themselves, it's not a boundary, right? It's more of like, I want to write a 15 chapter comic with the story of this very specific thing. It's like, hold on, man. Like, why 15? Like, back up. Like, that just start like, you don't need to start with that big end goal in mind. That's not a constraint. That's not a boundary. That's a like that's more than a goal. You're trying to lay out specifics without like, that's like the tip of the you know what I mean? Like, there's no reason that needs to be part of the project. You know what? Sometimes it feels like having a story you want to tell is different than like setting random arbitrary things about your story that you have no realistic business even knowing about your story yet, because you haven't done the work to get there. Like, I don't know what you call that, but like, to me, I guess there's sort of like a working big to small, right? And like, I think the big stuff can be the boundaries, right? The big stuff can be like, I want to, I don't know, like maybe the setting is a boundary, right? You want to tell a story set in, the 1850s in the US or whatever, right? That feels like a pretty good boundary. Your time set, you have a period of time, but maybe you're like, okay, but with some fantasy stuff thrown in, right? Whatever, that's fine too. Maybe you don't know what that fantasy stuff looks like, right? Maybe you do, but like, it's vague enough at that point. I think it's a good boundary. But once you start getting into like, I'm gonna write a chapter a week, and I mean, even a chapter a week, like, if you don't know where you're going, like, maybe I don't know. I guess a chapter a week's not terrible. But there are some things that feel like they're not boundaries and they're not constraints. They are just purely like, you have a big goal for yourself and you're gonna end up realizing that you bit off. I mean, I think deadlines are a little bit like this. Like, I think deadlines can be good, but I also think they can be bad if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, and then realizing that it's going to take way longer than you planned because you didn't know what the project was. And so how can you possibly set a deadline when you don't even know how long it's going to take? Like, I think there are things that can make it really hard to carry through on projects. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. Because I've had the issues more than a handful of times where I start a project and I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Like, I don't even know what I'm doing, and yet it's like I burn myself out because I've given myself random goals, or I hyped it up in my head long before I even had anything to be hyped about. And so like, by the time I hit the first roadblock, I was like suddenly disappointed because like, oh man, this isn't as fun as I thought it was going to be. Or, oh, this thing doesn't work as well as I thought it was going to work because I didn't actually know how it was going to work, right? So it's like I had all these expectations for myself. Anyway, you like the rough brush strokes on this, Skittle? Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going with this. I'm definitely thinking old ruins, right, for our world. I think it's fine to have lots of old, undiscovered locations. But I kind of want to incorporate some magical stuff, because I like the idea of all this energy and magic and stuff. So I want to write a short story versus I want to write a 3-page story. Yeah, or like, my character has all this very specific stuff about him, but I don't actually know like who he is or why he is the way. It's like getting bogged down in the details of a design before you know what the design is for, right? Or like it's like the difference between bottom up design and top down, right? Where you have like, I know my character needs a mohawk, but like, why? Like, if you don't know why he is the way he is and he's your main character, then like, maybe hold off on the character defining details until there's like fill it in as it comes, or like start with the core stuff, like the big goals, and the big ideas, and don't pigeonhole yourself into or don't don't put yourself in a corner, right? And then you have to like write yourself out of it. Like cause a lot of times like top-down design, at least the way that I think about top-down design, is like oftentimes you start with stuff that aren't fundamental, right? So you have like the pyramid, and at the base or like the foundation stuff, right? And then it goes up. But if you have all this surface level stuff that seems really cool, but you have no reason for it to be that way, because like by the time you build up, it might have changed. Like a character can't take on a life of its own if you're starting with the end character, right? But if you start with like the motivations and the goals or whatever, by the time you get to the end, the character might exist as something you never saw them, you didn't even know they were going to exist the way they are. This is like their end state, right? This is like and I feel like that's, I don't know. It feels like most of the time, it feels like it's the wrong, not wrong way. I don't want to make any objective statement. I feel like most of the time it's the wrong way to do it. It feels backwards. Like, I think a little bit of top-down design is fine, especially if you like, yeah, I think sometimes it's fine, but it feels a little bit like a market research kind of thing, where it's like, our market research has shown that our protagonist needs to be a guy between the ages of 20 and 25 in university, and he needs to have a haircut that looks like this because it's popular, and it's like, this is what our market research shows. But it's like, okay, but how does this fit into the story? I don't know. It's like, but that's what's good. It's like, no, that's not what's good. It's wrong. It's backwards. You should start with the... Anyway, I could ramble about this for a while, but yeah, it just feels backwards to me. Maybe other people like to do it this way, so figure it out later. Yeah, but then that doesn't work, because that's not how design and process work, right? You're literally starting with your destination instead of trying to like actually have a good artistic process or have a good creative process. So yeah. Anyway, what am I drawing here? I don't know. I'm just having fun. But yeah, I definitely want these pillars, but I want there to be some sort of glyphs or magic or something. Oh god, tell me about it. The amount of games I've worked on where market research defined our design constraints. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I worded that right, but like, to me, that's... Anytime someone's like, you need a character that does this, it's like, okay, do we though? like, is that what the project needs, or is that what you want it to have? It just feels so, oh gosh, I don't know. It just feels wrong. But I think that's the same as like if you're starting out and you've never done a project before. And again, I'm not the greatest person to talk on this because I haven't done a ton of projects. But like, if you're just doing your own personal project and you just have all these, or there's like a meme, right? There's a graphic design meme, and I've told this story a few times, but like, I've seen it in a few times floating around the internet. But it's like, you're a graphic designer. You go to a client, and then they ask you, here, I'll make a new file for this. Right. So I'm not a graphic designer, but there's like a graphic design meme that I've seen where it's like, you're a graphic designer and your client asks you for, big buttons that flash, so they need to flash because they look cool, and they need to be neon. Also, you want cats. We need cats in here, so we need a picture of a cat because cats are cool, and also so are dragons, because we want our website to be the coolest, and all these things are cool. so you put dragons. And also it needs, like, I don't know, it needs, like, you know, it needs to have a black background because, you know, we want it to be edgy or something. I don't know. And then it's like, it has all these lists of things, right? And it has this, like, just a laundry list of things. Nowhere does it state, like, what the goal of the website is. Nowhere does it state, like, any sort of foundational goals. It's all just like, here's a bunch of standalone elements that it needs. And by the time, designed by, and by the time you see the end, it's just like a total mess. Like, no graphic designer could make this work because it's just, it's a nightmare, right? You have random crap everywhere, and it's like that. This is like, you don't want to start here. It doesn't matter how cool you think the ideas are. That's not an idea. Like, anyway, yeah, you could do that for your own project, right? Like, don't be your own committee and design by your own committee. Like build it from the ground up. I don't think I'm being clear. I'm pretty sure I'm not wording my words very well, but I feel like a lot of people start there because that's the thing that popped in their head, and it ends up not being a good... Anyway. Like, it's hard, though, right? Like, if you're the one who has the idea, it's like, you should be able to do what you want. But not always, because it might suck? I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling. But yeah. Anyway, hope everyone's having a good day today. And if anyone has any art they want to share, feel free. You want to go from big to small. Yeah, exactly. Like big, broad stuff to very small, specific. And if you're breaking that, again, I think there are times you can, but, like, I feel like you do that sparingly and hopefully with some experience on how to do it. Or something. I don't know. Like there's definitely times where it's fine to go, like, top down. That's why solo projects are hard. You gotta be your own art director. Yeah. Well, and also, like, not just art director, but, like, I mean, maybe that is what art director would be, but like vision designer, like you have to be your own writer and your own, all the directors, like your own creative director, not just art director, but everything that might be a part of the project, everything director, right? Yeah. An everything director. What do I don't even know what I want to do. This is where, like, sometimes just going back to this and be like, okay, if I'm designing, like, a thing, because we have, like, some, hold on, where is it? Uh-oh, I'm on the wrong scene. I'm just sharing my endless mass of folders. No, but I have some of these environments that I know are gonna be in the world. I'm not really sure quite where I want to go with this, to be honest. But luckily, I mean, mostly I'm just painting this for myself, so I can pretty much do whatever I want. But I am trying to actually have, like, some sort of goal in mind beyond just, like, make it look cool. I want to, with each painting, one of my goals for this is to add a little bit of, like, world building. Doesn't have to be much, just a teeny tiny bit. It has to just be something that defines something about the world that wasn't defined earlier in other paintings. That way I can slowly build on all of it. So I have a few ways. So because this thing is, like, half light, half dark, it would have to be over, like, in this side, right? It'd have to be on the light side, and it would probably be... none of the environment is set, right? This could all be desert if I wanted, right? This could all be water if I wanted. There could be an ocean here. So nothing's set in stone. I could literally do whatever. So my goal for this is more or less to be I mean, honestly, the biggest goal, which is it's super vague and broad, but it basically is just a way to bridge my paintings together. Um, but I guess more specifically, when I'm actually bridging them together, my goal would be to slowly make everything logically fit together and give me direction, which I know sounds really loose, but like a lot of times when I paint, I guess it makes more sense to state my problem, right? So a lot of times when I'm painting, my issue is that like I just want to paint something and I don't really know what. And so this kind of gives me direction of like, okay, well, here's a thing I can paint. Or when I do paint, it gives me a constraint because now I have to adhere to all the stuff that came before it, right? I can't just say like, let's add this, this, and this because it looks cool. Well, no, that doesn't work in my world. We've decided that that's impossible. Like, we know our world has this group of things, and now I cannot. I need to make sure that my next painting will fit within that. And so each time I'm filling it, like for example, a hypothetical here, because I haven't done this one yet. But like, okay, so let's say we have a little town here. Well, actually, that one we have done. And we have a forest thing here. And this forest, you know, maybe if I want to add something here, it's going to relate to these two, right? Because this is established, and this is established, and so this is like a part combination of these, right? And by the time I get to the end, you're doing a Legend of Runeterra and trying to make all your work fit in the same. Yeah, a little bit. So it's funny because people have brought that up. Although, and actually, I had never seen the interactive map when I started this. Somebody linked it on stream and it crashed my stream. But yeah, a little bit Legend of Runeterra, where I'm just sort of building out a bunch of places, but I'm making them fit because I haven't designed any of the places yet. But I do have like some world building lore. I don't know how, if you haven't been here before, I don't know, you probably haven't heard any of it. But essentially, we were talking about like geology and sort of how it might work if you have like a half planet that's like tidally locked. And then people were talking about like, what do you do with like heat, or what do you do with so for example, we were talking about like a magic source that potentially comes in from like the sun. You can think of it not as heat, but something that like, I don't know, a magic, some sort of widespread, dispersed, non-concentrated magic. You can think of it as like where the sun shines, the magic lands, right? Very vaguely. But then there's like a concentration, right? There's a whole bunch of it over here, and there's none of it over here, because this is always dark. So what happens? So maybe some of that seeps into the ground, gets into the rivers, it flows, and stuff sort of like little concentrated spots over time, like sort of river deltas, and sort of get all that silt and that stuff that runs down from the river, and it sort of has these like fertile lands of like this highly concentrated magic stuff. And so maybe some of it go, and so maybe if, because it lands here and it's very non-concentrated, so maybe there's these spots that do get concentrated for whatever reason, and they're like, you know, they're, so over here maybe you have these concentrated areas, and sorry if I'm not explaining this very well, probably not that important, but you have these areas that like, that's how these plants grow, is that they sort of take up the stuff as it flows down and sort of gathers in these little hot spots. You can think of them like geysers or hot springs. And then that's how like the plants can grow in the dark, because they don't need photosynthesis. And then there's also going to be spots here that like maybe they don't have life. And so maybe it just like builds up the concentration and sort of accumulates. And then maybe it's like volatile or something. I don't know. I'm kind of making it up as we go, right? But the point is like, and then somebody brought up like, okay, well, what if you had like, you know, creature design that's like, you know, migratory birds that sort of harvest this energy stuff as it gets concentrated and sort of migrates over here, and sort of what if the animals themselves helped, you know, restore balance, so to speak. And so you can have, you know, rivers, you can underground things, you can have little geysers, like you can have all this sorts of things to kind of redistribute this problem that we've designed ourselves into, right? So you have like, you know, this non-concentrated energy here, and over time, natural mechanics, whether it's animals or rivers, they sort of reconcentrate it, and then things have to disperse it, and you have sort of this life cycle of sorts, right? And then maybe there's stuff that can only be gathered over here. Think now imagine this for like a survival game. It's not, but imagine, right? Maybe you have in the dark area, you have certain things that are only there, and certain maybe there's like, we decided this was like the Twilight Zone kind of like the, half. It's like perpetually evening, right? Because this is always light, this is always dark, so this is like in between, right? And this is like where all the this is where all the humans live, and so maybe there's like a big trade channel that connects like the Nightlands and the Daylands, and that's what this is, right? And then maybe there's people who go out and they like go on, maybe it's dangerous out here. I don't know. We haven't decided that yet. Maybe it's dangerous out here. Maybe it's not. So maybe there's traders who make their little, round trip voyage to different areas and then come back. And maybe you have like, there's a whole like potential ecosystem here of sort of like how these civilizations, and then maybe there's, farmlands over here. I don't know. But then also things like if there's a city, right? Where's the farmland? How do these people get food? Right? Just thinking about stuff like that very slowly, incrementally, right? It's not like, I don't know all the answers. But I guess all of that, like, so for example, one of the places we made was farmland. And then another place we made was like, this was like on the foresty area, but it was like, this is the magic forest, which I have in art of. I have art of everything that I've talked about. I've shared these before, but like this is the glowy magic forest with like wildlife drinking the magic juice. I don't know what you call it. And maybe they're glowing, and so there's a lot of bioluminescent stuff because it's not, you don't have the sun, and so maybe we need a light source to show stuff so it's not just black. And so maybe it's like glowing. And yeah, maybe life is just thriving. Maybe they're not dangerous. Maybe they're not scary. And these are all just sketches. They're not super well polished or anything. But over time, right? Like now that I have established that there's these glowy puddles of stuff, maybe we add, if we did another painting. So we just did another one, which this is not the same. But we were talking about like, okay, well, what if we had, this stuff is in the water, right? We were just talking about. This is our kind of our most recent one, but I'm not really loving it. But we were talking about stuff being in the water. So what if you had a place where like their entire civilization was built in like a rainy climate, and so you have, maybe you don't have these natural processes thinning out the energy, but what if you had some sort of thing like a filtration system? It rains, this stuff accumulates all the, oh, thank you for the follow. Maybe this stuff accumulates all the water, and it over time it like the magic stuff stays in here and the water flows out or something. I don't know. And so you have like this and then there's some glowy plants. We could have made these a different color, but I wanted it to be different. But yeah, maybe you have like a glowy plant. Anyway, I guess that the point I was trying to make was that like this couldn't have existed, right? I couldn't have gotten to the idea of like, some rainwater catching, overflowing thing with glowy plants. That couldn't have existed had I not randomly went down like this path and decided that it's like this, or, so it's very much trying to be incremental. Some of them are just going to paint stuff because it's cool, and I'll add it in later. But some of it will be probably, hopefully building up. Sai, hello! Hope you're doing well. But yeah, mostly this is just a project so that I can paint what I was going to paint anyway, and still feel like I'm making progress on something. It's sort of a coping project, because I have too many paintings that are just standalone, unrelated to anything else, right? I have a bunch of folders of just random stuff that, like, I like them. I like the stuff that I painted, but they don't... This actually could totally exist in this world. This one does not, though. Very similar to the last thing I just showed. Actually, these two are surprisingly similar. But yeah, like this was just a random thing. All of these things were random things. But this feels like I was just painting stuff that looked cool. Also, I like this one. I should probably add this one because it's cool. But like, does it relate? Oh, not really, right? Because I didn't have it in mind. And I think also one of my goals is like over time, my constraints will get more and more like tight. It'll become like more and more specific where right now, because I actually I'm reminded of like Magic the Gathering a little bit. There was a podcast I used to listen to quite a bit. It's called the Drive to Work podcast. It's Mark Rosewater, who's like one of the, is he vision design or lead design of some, he does some design planning stuff in Magic the Gathering. Anyway, he has a podcast where he talks about designing Magic and making Magic. And he talks about how in the early days of Magic the Gathering, how a lot of times in the art, they didn't have good, like, they didn't have, like, a lot of narrative design. They didn't really know what the sets were all about. They're just like, oh, we need a swamp, we need a mountain, we need an island, right? We need a plains. They didn't... Nowadays, when they get, when they commission art from artists, they have a whole laundry list of, like, style guides and different things that are gonna be like what can be included in certain sets and what makes the world feel like the world and what you must do and what you can't do kind of things. That didn't exist when it started, but as over time, as they sort of built up their worlds and they sort of figured out the direction of their project, now it's like super specific, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm sort of trying to in some ways mimic that, which is I'm not even trying. I don't even care if it's super good at the start. I want to start, and over time I'll build out if I need. But I'm not trying to like jump to the end and have everything figured out. I'm trying to figure it out, bit by bit. I think it makes it more fun, to be honest. Yeah, as I get closer, I get a clearer picture of what I'm working with. Exactly. And maybe I'll come up with something in one of these paintings that is just so cool, or that I think is so cool, that I just absolutely need to carry it throughout all of the rest of the paintings. And maybe then it'll, like, start something. Also, I kind of like these vibrant things. Some old, ancient civilization. I guess it's probably not that old if these things are still glowing, whatever they are. But yeah. Fungus Twilight? Yeah, something like that. Could work. But yeah, hope everyone's doing well. And as always, if anyone has any art they'd like to share, I'd love to see. I can get a little carried away in ranting and forget to, like, say hello to people and stuff. Yeah, maybe maybe they're used by traders, or maybe it's, maybe at one... Like, maybe it's, I don't know. Like maybe the reason they're ruins is like the, because it's very much in the day, right? This is clearly in the light area. So perhaps, right? So playing off of, again, I'm just kind of making this up right now, but playing off of this one, right? So this is the... Here, let me close some of these so I don't have 2 million files open. Right, so this is that area, right? So maybe this sort of energy buildup, right? Maybe because it's very volatile. We've kind of talked about that. Maybe this happened here, right? Maybe there was some sort of like, it got real dangerous because this sort of, it's in like, maybe at one point it wasn't, the world wasn't like this, right? Maybe at one point it wasn't tidally locked. I don't know if that even makes sense, because I don't know if a planet that is tidally locked can at one point have not been. I don't know if that even works. But let's say that it does work that way, and at one point, people built these, or maybe it always was, but maybe people built this civilization out here, and maybe there just wasn't enough, like, energy dispersal stuff, and it got concentrated, and life became unlivable, and magic, yeah, exactly, magic, hand wavy magic stuff happened, and bad stuff happened, and so that everybody had to flee the cities, and things started crumbling, and bad stuff happened. Maybe that's an explanation for why there's ruins out in the middle of this area that looks like you could live there. That's not to say that everything is going to be, desolate, but it could be an explanation, kind of. Again, it's sort of hand-wavy. It's a hand-wavy explanation. There could be monuments, old statues of things. Statues of people. Although that makes it look like they're still there. I kind of like that. Although I don't like these shapes. Maybe if there's a statue, this has fallen over. Ooh, I kind of like that. Changing these angles so they're not completely parallel. Mileage may vary, but I love when old ruins get repurposed by new civilizations. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So that's actually kind of what we were talking about with this, this main hub. And again, I don't want to get too much into, like, lore on stream. I mean, we did, and that's kind of how we came up with stuff. But I'm also aware that it's kind of not fun to listen to. I like talking about it, but I don't think it's the most exciting, and also it can sound a little broken record-y if I ramble about it too much, because it's like I don't need people to care about my project as much as I do, and so I'm happy to just talk about the art stuff. That's perfectly fine. But we've actually talked about how this location, this one, is sort of like that, where I think there's going to be a lot of, like, old ruins, big things that used to exist that no longer, they're just sort of remnants, if you will, but people live here and they go along their life, they use it as a trade route. Maybe that's not what it originally was. There's like these little aqueduct channel things, maybe the people are playing in there, maybe it was once used for something else. But, like, it's a whole, like, it is a repurposed thing. And so you have all these remnants of, like, these monumental things that who knows what they are. But I'd like to imagine the people aren't using them for that. There's just cities and stuff back here. So you have, like, this giant ruined structure thing. So we do have a little bit of that, and I think that will be, and there's a lot of that, right? So, like, this one, funny enough, also, this resolution's very low because I'm on a compressed file. But there's also, like, more ruins. So basically, everything is ruins to some degree. Like, it's very... I don't think... And again, this is going back to our desktop... Oh, Majar, hello! Going back to our discussion around, like, top-down design. I'm pretty sure... And again, I don't know if this is true or not, but... I kind of like it if there wasn't, like, your sort of stereotypical, like, villains and good good guys and bad guys, and like, ooh, everything is things that live in the night are dangerous. I don't really care if it's like that or not. I don't think it's. I'd like it if it wasn't. I kind of like the idea of things are kind of in a good state. Like, everything's kind of in balance and things are, maybe there was a dark past where things weren't sort of in balance and the whole world was, maybe there was wars and stuff. But I think, like, the current state of the way that I'm designing stuff, I think it would be cool if things were just pretty chill. Like I don't think, lots of old ancient things to be discovered, but I don't think there needs to be constant, like, like, I don't know. I think a world that's like constantly in chaos isn't really what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking more of the opposite, right? It's more, there are some like potentially unstable things, like random spots of high, magic concentration stuff that might be a little dangerous. But mostly, it's pretty like, positive post-apocalyptics. Yeah, exactly. Things happened, empires fell, people are now chill. Exactly. There's a multicultural, like big area where like, people from all over, people from all over will come and trade in this big city, and then you have like smaller things. Maybe there's different, species and races, primarily, scattered throughout. But like there's like a big hub, there's also just, maybe spots that there are still spots that are like, like hard to live in, like the desert and stuff, so it's not going to be thriving in that sense. And so you still might have, like expeditions that are going into the difficult areas to navigate or whatever, right? I don't know what we will end up with. So there can be like difficulties, but it doesn't have to be like, wars and conflict and that kind of thing. Like maybe people are pretty chill and they're just all like trying to not die. I don't know. Like maybe their biggest threats are like tornadoes, like just the natural world, not like military, and I don't know. I feel like a lot of fantasy devolves into like military battles and stuff. And I know that, history does too, but I don't know. I like the geological side of things, right? I like to focus on, the mountains and the the climate and how all the parts work together. I like that stuff a lot more. Exactly. Like, a place that is perpetual, like tornadoes and glaciers, and not glaciers, and like hurricanes, or you have, like very snowy places that are basically inhospitable. But, you could still have somebody who's hunkered down there. And, maybe it's a certain race of creature that is like more, just better at surviving in that climate, right? Maybe they're like mountain goat people or something. And, maybe there's room for character design in there. But the idea that like people are just gonna be terrible towards each other because they're different, I feel like that is something I don't care too much about. And who knows, maybe like any world building project, maybe I build up the world and that type of story would fit perfectly. Maybe someday I will do, I don't know where this will take me. Also, what am I painting? I don't know. Let's just sketch. I don't know if I want to keep working on this. I don't know what I'm painting on. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm rambling. I'm doing more rambling than painting, and I don't know what I'm trying to paint. I mean, I guess I'm over time building up. It's just vibes. It is. Today's a pretty chill day. I feel like some days are more productive than others. Today is pretty much just, I don't know, me painting. Pretend it's real and you have to walk this. That's true. That's a good way to do it, Majar, where you put yourself in there and like, okay, I'm in this place. This is obviously like the main capital like the main place, the important part, you know, up on the hill. They built this thing. Somehow it seems to be surviving, but the path up there is rocky, and there's stuff tipped over. You know, old, you know, bits of stone just crumbled, falling down the hill. Today we're half a stream, all stream, and apparently so is Casey. Oh, did you guys stream together? I think you might have said that, and I might have missed it. Wait, no, I think I saw you guys stream together. I was literally in the stream. Wasn't that like 2 days ago or yesterday? Was it yesterday? No. Was it you? Somebody in Casey streamed like 2 days ago together. It might have been you. Was it you? I don't know. I don't think I'm following you. Yeah, it was Monday. Wait, that was literally 2 days. Yeah, I was there. I don't think I said anything. I was lurking. Yeah, I was there. I'm keeping you talking? Yeah, but I'm not talking about light color. Yeah, but anyway, I hope the stream with Kathy went well. I was only there for a bit. Today I just raided her after mine ended. Gotcha. You know what'd be kind of cool? If there was like a river, maybe not, no, maybe not a river. Maybe like a dry riverbed to show, okay, hold on. This is, I don't want to get too artsy on y'all, but a dry riverbed to show that things have deteriorated. So at one point, there was a river. It has since dried up. Just like this land once was flowing and had, you know, stuff. Maybe there was like an old, you know, rocky ledge here. What am I trying to say? Like, maybe, like, because I think it'd be cool if there was like a gap between here. Like, maybe we don't even know if it was once a riverbed. Maybe it's not going to read very well. At least in my head, there's like a river that ran through here. Or something. But no longer runs through here. Is that going to be... Is that too haphazardly put in? Is that just put in randomly? I don't know. Maybe that's not a good idea. She strongly recommended you because I struggle with painting landscape. Well, if there's any questions about landscapes or anything, I'm happy to talk about them because sometimes when I'm rambling about non-art stuff or art adjacent stuff, yeah, it's not always super on topic. I mean, we've been talking about art though, but not about like making art really. See, I don't know if I want to add a random thing in there like this. It's not bad, but it might break up the painting. Like, we already kind of have... Like, I don't know if I want to put a big line across the painting, you know? Like, that can't be good for the composition. I mean, it's probably not terrible. But yeah, a lot of what I do on stream is not... Typically, I don't do like a day 2 on stream. Generally, what I do is just do a lot of sketching. So like a lot of thumbnail stuff. So these are what I did last stream. Obviously, this is... Yeah, that the one I'm working on today. But I did all these last stream. And yeah, just little sketches. They don't typically take very long. Especially when I'm just making things up from the start. Maybe if you break it more dramatically? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but I mean, the only problem with stuff like that is that, I mean, kind of even what I'm doing now, it sort of makes it feel like it should be the focus. or like, look at this, you know, precarious pathway with a big, you know, chunk taken out of it. Like, that feels like that's the focus of the scene, and everything I've done so far is not making that the focus of the scene. And so I kind of feel like forcing that in is probably not going to be good, which is probably why I'm not going to do what I was thinking of. That's awesome. That's what I want to get better at, the nice thumbnails. Gotcha. Yeah, I think if you don't have an idea going in and you just kind of go with the flow, like I typically here, I could talk about thumbnailing more because I feel like I don't have the brain cells to work on this today. So maybe I'm gonna save it and I will continue on it later. Because I think I have made good progress today, right? We have done before and after. So yeah, I've worked it up a bit. I might be killing some of it. But I changed it a bit, because we had a very bright foreground, and I didn't like that. I still don't know if I don't like it. I might like it. I'm not convinced. I'm still on the fence about if I want the dark foreground, and I kind of wanted the bright in the middle. Right, so that's kind of what I tried to change. I don't know if I love that. But yeah, why don't I do some sketching for a bit while I stew on this and think about the direction I want to go. Just close some stuff. I have way too many files open. One second, just making a new folder. Nine, 6, 1. Okay, there we go. Then there. New background. Okay, what's a good color? So yeah, typically when I do thumbnails like this, oftentimes I don't actually have any goal in mind or like any specific thing, and I find that's a lot easier. And sometimes when I do have a goal, it's very much just like a mood or a vibe. Like, I know I want to paint a rainy scene or a foggy scene, or I want to paint something that's, you know, dark and, you know, like spooky or something, right? Like, I think big general moods are much easier to start with if you're starting with color. Also, same thing for like with shape. If you know it's going to be spooky and, you know, have certain, you know, vibes, you might start, you know, with lots of like pointy, spiky stuff, right? Like, that's going to make it feel a certain way. And, you know, anything with shape language where you're like, okay, this is going to big rounded shapes is going to feel a different way. You know, like rounded shapes versus pointy shapes, right? And so, yeah, a lot of times I'm just starting with like big moods, or sometimes it's, you know, subject matter, like it's going to be a forest or a river or something, right? But like generally it's very broad stuff, and then as I work, I start getting, but obviously you can't always work like that, right? Like sometimes you know what you're going to paint, right? Especially in like a commission or something, right? Or if you're working on a project that has very specific guidelines. Sometimes it's like you are painting a, you know, a very specific type of architecture and a very specific kind of scene with a very specific story happening, and it's like, okay, well then obviously you can't just do anything. Yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of different. It kind of depends on what you're doing. But I find even sometimes for that kind of stuff, there's still like a gap in like, you know, like they might be specific, but there's still like a mood that you can start with, and then you can sort of figure out certain things that aren't required. I don't know. Like, oftentimes there's still a way you can kind of sort of work this way. But anyway, I'm just going to start randomly because I don't know what I want to paint. You know, maybe we could just start with like a bluish sky or something. I don't know. I think I don't want to go... Huh, you know what? Do I want to go super saturated or not? I don't know. I feel like practicing some environments through doing more vibey stuff, but it might help work out my environment muscles. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, a big thing is like paint the ground like at its most basic, and this isn't really for you, Gonzalez, but really for anybody listening. I think at its most basic, right, an environment can just be like three objects, right? You could have like this, and that's an environment. Literally, put three lines, boom, foreground, midground, background, right? And like that sounds obvious, right? And obviously, maybe I did some atmospheric perspective here, right? This one's maybe a little darker. This one's less dark. And then, maybe I bring those shadows or whatever all the way across. And like suddenly you have literal foreground, midground, background, right? That, to me, like literally three objects can be an environment, right? Big object. And again, it could be a person, right? You could have a person here, maybe another person here, maybe two people here, and then maybe a couple people back here, right? All of a sudden you have, oh, there's a crowded scene, right? There's a bunch of people. It's like, okay, well, that's literally an environment, right? All I've drawn is people, but still an environment because it's a scene, right? You have maybe there's something in the background, and this is oversimplified, but like that kind of thing is kind of at the core of like what I'm doing, right? It's just adding in elements. Obviously, the scale can change, right? You could take a scale like that, and so instead of a person here, maybe it's a foreground element, right? So same thing, a background element, foreground element. I'm just doing like light to dark. So there's yeah. You don't always have distant objects. You don't always have foreground objects. Just like in environments, you don't always have. Yeah, I mean, I think as you. So I think like what I'm trying to do, right, is just make a depth, right, and to make depth, you can have, scale, right? So perspective, like objects, big object, small object, medium object, right? So just scale. So repeating objects in perspective, right? So objects getting smaller, right? I don't know what the best way to say that is. This is not how you spell smaller, right? Objects getting smaller. So you have scale is the first thing. And then you have like overlap, right? So not only are they getting smaller, they're overlapping each other, right? So you have an object back here and an object here. Well, already this foreground, midground, background's overlapping, right? They're literally like, you can see, they're like hills, right? The hills are overlapping each other. And then, so now when we have a small object, it feels like it's behind, this object here feels like it's in front of this object because it's literally overlapping that shape, right? It's like you can see that shape behind it. So, already it's like, okay, we have a start of an environment because we have overlapping shapes and they're in scale. But then you also have things like atmosphere, right? So atmosphere. And then you also have, so this is like atmospheric perspective, right? It's getting lighter and lighter. Again, I kind of skipped a step. I just did all three of them at once. But then I would say the last one is like form, right? This is the one I always ignore. And I think people who do characters focus most on this. But this is like, instead of just having a silhouette, suddenly you give it, like an actual roundness, right? So instead of just being flat, now we give it a bit of a ground plane, right? And suddenly it's like, okay, well, these are like real spaces, right? Or these are real objects. And this probably isn't the best example, but whatever. It's now things have a bit of form, right? This is also things like where you would add, a ground plane. So you might, or if you want to do like a, roads or something in 3D, right? You're adding that kind of thing. You're adding this three-dimensionality to these flat shapes. right? But like those things to me, yeah, you could. So to get back to what Drefzilla just asked, what if you had no distinct object, just interesting rock? Wait, no distinct objects, but maybe just interesting rock shapes. Well, I mean, you still have the same thing, right? You, it doesn't have to be distinct objects. It could just be interesting shapes, right? You could have big blobs. I mean, isn't that what I do most of the time? Is just make big blobs. Maybe this one goes that way. Maybe these go here. But anyway, this is not me. I'm oversimplifying for an explanation, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that you can technically do a scene by starting to eliminate this. What happens if you have no multiple objects, no humans for scale, you have no trees, just a flat scene, so no scales, no overlap because it's a flat scene. It's a crystal clear day, you have no atmosphere, and again, just a flat ground concrete plane. That's a hard scene to paint, right? That's this. And you have very little in the way of texture going into the distance, to make it look like there's a clear scene, right? You don't have objects. The second you get to add small objects in the distance, and you have texture on the ground, or atmospheric perspective, right? I'm already adding atmosphere, but the second you get things like this, and you can start using some of these, maybe you just have form, so maybe you have you can show some contours or something. Not really form, but this is, you're showing something. It's hard to do this without any of these, right? Also, I kind of was on the wrong way. Oh, no objects really there, just one large object? Oh, gotcha. So that typical floating rock bridge going off into the distance above the abyss, for example. Well, you do have objects in there. For you do. Let me show you. So, I may not have distinct objects in this, but you do because you have overlap, right? You have overlapping textures, and it's still very abstract, right? But you have overlapping textures. Also, the textures are getting smaller, so I'm still using scale. Well, you can't see that, right? I'm still using scale. I'm still using overlap. I'm still using... I'm using scale of, texture, right? Not really scale of objects. So I'm not putting, a small object and a medium object and a big object, right? But I am putting small flowers, smaller and smaller, and then medium in the, here. And then I'm putting bigger shapes in the foreground. And I'm also using atmosphere, right? So there's also atmospheric perspective. Just call it AP, why not? And then what else do I have? That's pretty much it. I don't really have form. I'm not really describing the form in three-dimensional space, right? But I'm pretty much doing 3 of them. And I would call theirs overlap in the sense that the things in the foreground overlap the things behind them, and then there's textures layered on top. And so by the time you can kind of follow... you can kind of sort of follow this, right? Logically. Okay, this is in front of this stuff. And here's that stuff, right? That's kind of in front of these shapes. These shapes are clearly in front of the thing behind them, right? Whatever that is, right? And this stuff is... There's obviously these shapes here. Again, overlap, right? There's another layer of shapes here and here. And so, you can kind of trace it back. And these shapes get smaller and smaller. That's overlap. It's not as, it's more abstract and brushy, but it's still there. Right? So I think there's overlap and there's scale. They're getting smaller and smaller. I don't know. Maybe that's a little abstract, but I think that still holds true. And then sometimes there's scenes like this where I don't really, you might even argue there isn't overlap in the foreground, but then you're still using... scale and perspective, right? I guess linear perspective is the one that I would call, I didn't really include that in the list. But, doing things like the converging lines is linear perspective, right? You're showing depth by showing things converge, right? So maybe that's the 4th one that I should have included. right? So I think sometimes in scenes you have distinct overlap, but then in like the foreground, it's not really about overlap. It's more about that perspective and scale, right? Things are getting smaller, but they're not really overlapping. And then it's not until over here that they start overlapping, right? So I'm kind of using, I'm not always using the exact same things in the same way. Sometimes the, you know, sometimes all the overlap is in the foreground and there's none in the background. Sometimes it's all in the background and not in the foreground. Anyway, now let's actually paint. Sorry, I don't know how that went into like ramble mode. What a unproductive stream today. Yeah, it's just how it is sometimes. Okay, I'm gonna start just putting colors down. Charzia, hello. Hope you're doing well. What's a good color? Blue. Blue for the sky. Maybe a purple for the foreground. Maybe more purple. I'm gonna bust out a smudge brush. I think another way, like when doing because I always typically start with atmospheric perspective, and so like you can start with like a warm color and a cool color. You can mix them, just to just literally be a blurry mess. But even that, get some basic perspective in there or some horizontal lines, right? Like again, with sort of spacing to show depth. Suddenly you have like a environment, right? It's literally 3 lines and atmospheric perspective. Anyway. I mean, if you clip these last 15 minutes, you've got a killer tutorial video? Maybe. Maybe. But yeah, no, I think this kind of thing is, it can start really simple, but then you can start adding layers, right? Because you can add in lighting, and suddenly you add in, all different stuff. So it can get complicated, but I think at its core, it can be really, really simple, right? Like, I think if you never painted an environment, you could just make a 4-step gradient, literally from almost black to almost white, right? Maybe make the layers get slightly smaller. So like, the black would be the biggest layer on the bottom, and then you kind of get an increasing size like that, right? And then basically you just draw shapes back here. You just pull upward. So whatever shape you want back here, maybe they're trees. Take that next layer, make the brush a little bigger. Again, maybe some trees, maybe some rocks. And suddenly you have an environment, right? You have a whole landscape. It's super easy. Or you could do the same thing, right? So same sort of gradient here. But this time, you can play with the shapes. You can make them, bigger. You can make them smaller. You can make some of them go up or down, right? Maybe this one goes something like that. And I'm kind of just playing around with the ratios of these. Maybe there's some back here as well, so there's like a gap. Maybe there's a hole in the rock here, right? And suddenly you're playing with these and you're just making an environment. So like this, it's the same thing, right? I'm doing literally the same thing, but this one's a little different, obviously. Trying to keep them the exact. They don't have to be like light to dark, right? But I am keeping light to dark. Maybe this one's a tree here. Maybe there's some little gaps back here or something. I don't know. Could be anything. Anyway, like I think anyone could pretty much do this stuff, right? Or certainly this. And I'm doing the same thing here, right? Obviously, in this one, I've added a little bit of light, so I've basically made some extra shapes here and taken like a bright color and added in a light source. But mostly it's the same thing, right? So you start by establishing space and fill out space. Yeah, kinda. Yeah, generally, I mean, obviously there's exceptions, right? I think that's part of what makes it sort of like fluid. Like instead of me following the same sort of thing and doing the same thing over and over, like I can kind of pivot and change and do different stuff. Like I don't have to stay in the exact same like method. I don't, I don't have to work background to foreground or foreground to background. I don't have to have a ground plane technically. I know I do a lot because I think it helps. Um, but there's a lot of different ways of working, and I think at some point, once you get okay at, like pivoting around between them, you can start doing different things. Um, but yeah, I think oftentimes it is. You're sort of establishing space. Sometimes, I'll establish a space like this, and I'm obviously a big fan of like, paths. I like paths in my art. But sometimes it'll do things like this where I'm literally carving into the ground, right? I'm like making a, what do you call it? Like a cliff, right? Just a big cavern in the ground. Um, I don't know if that's going to look good or not, but anyway, there's a cavern in the ground. No, it's not too bad. Do you recommend working from reference to... Yeah, to gain light and color control you've got. I mean, yes. Yeah. Uh, Yeah, yes, kind of. I think, okay, so I think there's a big... References are always good, right? You're going to learn stuff about how things work. I think the problem with references for... I mean, it's not a problem with references. The problem people run into with references, with environments, is that they aren't simple, right? Like, if you're trying to learn to, like, build up environments sort of, like, any... I mean, it doesn't have to be like the way I do it, but if you're trying to build them up like I am, or sort of in just sort of like come up with them on your own and get to a point where you can paint an environment, maybe you start with line art, maybe you don't, but you want to, do a sketch and then you want to turn it into a painting, or you want to just figure out how to do a sketch in the first place, right? I think the problem with in real environments is that they aren't simple. They're all the complexities. So like, for example, the way I was showing the light to dark thing, right? No, very few environments are, I mean, like, what I think the way to do it, and again, I'm not, if I had a course, I would advertise it here. I don't. But I think starting, like, I'm a big fan of starting with atmospheric perspective. And there's a whole bunch of environments in photos that are basically just atmospheric perspective, right? But most aren't. Most have lighting, most have different materials, most have weird multiple light sources, right? But if you find a scene that's just atmospheric perspective and you have, say, something in the distance where you can see them fade. Uh-oh. Okay, I think I'm back. Am I back? Okay, I think I'm back. I think I'm back. Okay, as I was saying, again, apparently my computer struggles to do searches. I turned off my music because it was playing through YouTube. And I don't know. I don't know if it's a Chrome issue or what, but yeah, my computer struggles to load things while streaming. But anyway, if you Google Foggy Forest, you will find a bunch of scenes like this. There's a whole bunch of them. Some of them look like that. Some of them are probably AI garbage, but for our purpose, who gives a crap at the moment? We're just trying to... Was that an ad break thing? Nope, I don't run ads. There was no ads. I just accidentally broke my stream by searching stuff. Anyway, so stuff like this, right? I literally Googled foggy forest. That's what I'm painting here, right? Like that is literally just, there's a gradient. It goes from light to dark. The dark stuff's in the foreground, like these front trees. The light stuff are trees in the background. They're very light. They're smaller in scale. The foreground are bigger in scale, right? Could be this one. Could be this one, right? Some of them, you could also have the same thing, but not in trees like that, but you have the same thing, right? It's a gradient. It's literally just a gradient from light to dark, right? And in this case, the trees are, just like this. They're triangles, right? So I think if you wanted to study from photos, I think the best way to do it. Sorry, been there. Oh, did I crash again? No. But yeah, so I think if you wanted to study from photos for environments, I think the best way is to almost like a curriculum where you take the different concepts for an environment and like making depth, and don't jump straight into something with lighting and all the different parts, but like starting with just something really, really simple. Be like, here is an environment with, multiple layers and scale. Get a sense of that, right? Get your values. Maybe then you do something like sepia tone type stuff. Same scene, well, mostly same value structure, right? But this time you're using some warm light in the background and cool colors in the foreground, or cooler, right? So like a green blue in the foreground and a yellow in the background. And then maybe eventually you do, okay, well, here's a little bit of linear perspective going on in the foreground. You still have the same thing, but now you're incrementally building up, right? I think that's a better way to learn, because I think it's, if you jump into like a scene like this, that's just values everywhere, kind of color explosions. It's very hard to organize it, because it's not, I mean, this one's not even that bad. Also, I think it's AI, but it's, you have like bright spots in the foreground, you have bright spots in the background, you have dark spots in the foreground, you have dark spots in the background. Why is this the darkest part of the image? I don't know, but it's in the background. So it's like, it's just kind of hard to like wrap your head around that stuff. And so I think starting simple, and then there's, I could probably like write a list of like things to search. I don't know. Because like, I definitely think it's good to study from photos. But I think it like any study, it's nice to have some sort of foundation of what you're actually trying to study, if that makes sense. Like if you're studying values, look for images where the focus is on the values, right? And they have a clear grouping and they're organized nicely. If your focus is on, I don't know, colors and mood, then find an image with a strong mood where you can like recognize what the mood is and it has colors, and then you can study the colors, but maybe independent of the other stuff, right? I don't know. So yeah. But yeah, I think it can be really hard to study from photos. Like, because I don't know, photos are just like, gosh, I hate saying this because photos are so good. Like, you have to study from real life. You have to study from photos. Like, that's how you learn stuff, because a lot of concepts, right, like the foggy forest, I would even make an argument. Gosh, I wish I could show you better. But like, I would even argue that like when you have like a sunny scene, this exists. Like, you still have this structure. It's just sometimes you have an extra structure on top of it, right? So you have like so you have your image, but then on top of it you have like random light. Maybe like, okay, so the foreground in this scene is dark, right? It's the darkest part of the image. But what if you had a light shining in? right? And you had a big old bright light just blasting your whole scene, somebody inevitably, and obviously this isn't what it would look like, but bear with me here while I make my point. Somebody inevitably would say, well, isn't the foreground supposed to be the darkest part of the scene? Well, it is. Well, not really. I mean, it's not because you have a light blasting in here, but if you have like a little nook and cranny or a rock in the light, you still might see the bright light, but underneath that, if there were a shadow that you could see, that's like, the you know, the ambient occlusion under the rock, it would be the darkest part. It's just sometimes you don't have the darkest part visible. Sometimes it's being blown out by the light, right? And so sometimes you have a light source that's just blasting into your scene, covering up the whole front. And so this now is the darkest part of your scene, right? Well, let's get rid of that. There. Now this is your darkest part of the scene, right? Well, if you're on a camera, it's going to auto balance it to make that dark because it needs a dark part. So suddenly your camera rebalances to give your midground the darkest part, but you still kind of have the foreground. Like it's under there. Like you still have your dark stuff, which is, I think that's what's really hard with real life, is that sometimes you look at things, you're like, why is the background the darkest? Like, what is happening? Right? Or like, why is, like, nothing makes sense, right? Like, it can be really confusing. And I just feel like, anyway, I could organize my thoughts better, but anyway, I'm rambling. Man, I wish it, well, if it makes sense, that's good. That's good. I'm happy. But I don't think I've explained it better in past streams. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I think the big thing for environments is just perspective. If you can get good at perspective, you can more or less logic your way through stuff. I think a big one that people struggle with is like ellipses in perspective, which I struggle with them too. Because a lot of times when if I'm making a shape like right, like if I'm making little ellipses back here, right, they're very very flat, the horizon. And so if I want to put like puddles here or something, which I kind of already had puddles, so it didn't really work. Right, if I want to put puddles in this scene, right, I might do something like this. But these shapes that I'm making are kind of following perspective, right? So like they're very flat here, and they're a little bit, I can get more rounded. It's kind of the same thing if I were to make like a path, right? I'd go very horizontal in the back. And sorry if I'm jumping all over it. I swear these concepts are connected. But if I made like a path in the back, it might be very, very horizontal. But then as I get closer and closer, it becomes more and more vertical, right? So like these layers eventually are basically just zigzagging back and forth, right? And the same shape is true with the like ellipses. So the ellipses are going to be very, very flat, like that. It's flat. So if I draw a line, right, it might look something like this. And so like to me, this is like you wouldn't want, I don't know, how do I word this? I don't know how to word this, right? But like you want your lines to go more and more horizontal the further back they go, which is also the same with like how round your ellipses are, right? So like the circular shape in the foreground, as it's laying flat on the ground, this could be pretty round, but I can't draw a round shape like this. That's not going to look right, right? This needs to be very, very flat, right? Just like the path over here, if I'm drawing something far away and it's near that horizon line, it needs to basically be a flat line. No ellipses allowed in the back. And obviously it depends on the scale that you're drawing, or the depth of field, but it's a different topic for a different day. Anyway, following the plane means that the closer to the horizon line, the more bunched everything is. Exactly. The darker lighter isn't really about category. it isn't really the right category. It's more about narrowing the value range by distance. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think that's probably a better way to say it. But not really. That's only technically true. I mean, yes, you're if you're talking about both light and shadow, you are narrowing the value range as you get farther away. Yes, I think that's right. That's right. That's a better way to say it. I think I guess for me, I never really like that's harder to wrap my head around because sometimes you still have a wider contrast in the foreground, which you still have to then juggle because there's still like a structure, right? There's still like your grouping of lights and darks. And so suddenly you're dealing with light and shadow and you have to group your lights and darks. And then you're still grouping your lights and darks as you go further away, but now the values are also changing. To me it's just more to juggle. But yeah, no, you're right. It is literally just grouping the value ranges. So like both my lights and my shadows far away will be closer together, and my shadows and my lights far up close will be the maximally opposite, right? So like literally black and white or something. I don't know. I guess I mean, there's a lot of different ways to like talk about them, but yeah, that's probably the better way. Usually make it. I mean, some scenes are darker the further away you get, right? But I think what Dreff said is still true. So even if you were to invert this, right? So let's say you were to put it was a nighttime scene and you had a light in the foreground. So think of like you're staring into a forest. These trees are very, very hard to see, right? Because they're far away. And then as you get closer, the light is shining on a row of trees up here, right? So there's some trees here, but as you get far away, you can hardly see them, right? And these kind of all fade to nothing. And then maybe there's a big tree in the middle that you're shining your light on, right? You're in a car, right? So here's your car, and you're shining a light on a tree, and this is the tree that's catching your light, right? So even something like this, the value range is still closer in the back, right? So you still have a tighter value range back here, and you have more contrast up. Now, technically, I didn't add any of the high contrast stuff, but if you were to have a shadow that's visible, you would still have high contrast shadow, right? Now, technically, I guess you might have like a lot of bounce light or something, and it could technically fill out that way, so you would never really get dark shadows. But you still have like, in a sense, you still have the bright contrast. It's just it's like in right like you're still following the same rule. It's just the atmosphere is, well, it's dark, it's black. You have no there is no light in the atmosphere really, so it's just things fade to black because but the idea behind atmospheric perspective is just that like you're looking through stuff, right? You are here and you're looking through the air. And so if you're looking through pink air, right, by the time the light hits you, everything looks, it's like if you're looking through, like, you can imagine like looking through transparent, infinitely thin panes of glass, right? They're just very, very transparent. But there's a lot of them. So just like if you've ever looked through like, that infinite mirror bounce thing, like things, it ends up looking greener and greener. Well, that's because it's not perfectly transparent. It's because as that light bounces back and forth, right? So if you had a light over here, and if these were a bunch of red panes of glass, right? Or think of like a dust particles that are kind of slightly reddish, or maybe they, whether they're scattering the light or absorbing all the non-red light. Either way, you can think of it as like super transparent material. If you had something over here that was, blue, no, not blue. Let's do white. A white object over here. By the time that white object gets to you, it's gonna look pretty red because you're looking through a bunch of red stuff, right? And just like the atmosphere, even if you can't see it, right, it might look like a blue sky. if you look through enough atmosphere, it's going to look blue, right? So instead of red, it would be like little, I mean, it's not literal panes of glass, but you know what I mean. It's just particles. You're looking through a dense cloud, basically, or not a dense cloud, a very thin cloud. It's so imperceptibly thin, and so yeah, the further away you look, the more atmosphere gets in the way. And the atmosphere could be fog, right? Like in a foggy forest, or a foggy scene like this. It could be super duper thin, and it could be like a clear day, but you're still gonna have a little bit of it. It could be fire smoke. It could be, again, it could be a smoke bomb. It could be anything, right? It could be a combination of all of that. It could be dust particle. It could be, yeah. So the atmosphere is just anything you're looking through, basically, which is typically going to be the color of the sky. So if your sky is like pink, then the things further away are going to be pinker, and also everything's going to fade towards that pink, right? Or like the orange and air in Canada. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think atmospheric perspective shouldn't be that hard of a concept. I think painting it is harder. The concept's not that hard. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't think so. Um, but yeah, no, I think just doing little like not studies, but little value exercises like this, where you're putting in like a dark object, or of course you can also invert it, right? Like you don't have to have, you could have a dark object on the top of your painting, right? So for example, if I were to take the same painting, I don't know why the stream just turned into me rambling about painting this stuff, which is fun. I like it. But yeah, instead you could have a scene like this, right? Your dark stuff could be in the top of the scene. Now this is like we're looking underneath trees or something, right? So they're still in the foreground. Now they're just on the top of the page. And maybe this one's, trying to think of how to overlap. Maybe there's another scene here. And maybe there's here. Again, I'm just playing with the values. If they're darker in this case, I'm adding them on top. Again, I can always add things on top, right? I can add like lighting later. So I have a little bit of lighting, right? Maybe there's some lighting up here. You gotta clip the hell out of so many good lessons? No, I probably won't. It'll be on YouTube though. But I don't think I'm gonna edit it. I'm too lazy for that. I'm too lazy to go in and edit my stuff and clip it. If somebody wants to do that, you guys are welcome to clip it. Although I think clipping only works for 60 seconds, and I ramble too much for that. But yeah, so stuff like that. Suddenly that's an environment. Again, slap in some foreground or some characters in the foreground, midground, background. Have some overlapping shapes, right? Put in a character like here. Again, we're gonna put a character here. Maybe a medium one here. Maybe a couple medium ones here. Suddenly you have like a whole scene. Some characters. And like the gist of it, again, I'm just using two values, right? Or not two values, two colors. I'm using like four values, right? Like mostly four values. But technically, once you get to this stage, this is what I would call like the value structure, right? Your values are pretty much set. And I'm only using one value structure. Again, I already showed that you could invert it and do like a nighttime scene or something. You could have your dark layer in the midground, right? It doesn't really matter. But if you're thinking of atmospheric perspective, you're going to have that, right? In terms of actual like composition and values, you could have anything, right? You could have this. Right, this could be your values makeup, right? This might be like a grove of trees or something, where the grove of trees is in the shadows, and they're casting a shadow here, right? That's sort of on the ground, so this is getting that sky, and then you have like the sun coming in the foreground, right? That's kind of, maybe that's what that is, right? Maybe there's some negative space back here too. right? So that's like another value structure. But either way, once you have your value structure, and once you sort of have your scene arranged the way you want, you can pretty much do whatever you want with colors, right? I think colors is like the next stage, and I don't, you know, you don't have to do anything with it, but you know, you could play around with like, you could put greens in here. You could even just take like an airbrush and, well, maybe not an airbrush, maybe like an overlay. You could just like start slapping in colors and changing things because like the values, once the values are set, you can kind of get away with a lot. Not always. Again, there's always exceptions. Any rule like this is, and there is a caveat here, and I want to point it out because these are extremely simplified. This is not like the end all be all, right? Um, Obviously there's more to a painting than just painting in values, and there's more to composition than just layering things in foreground, midground, background, right? There's all these are extremely simplified, but they're I think a lot of times when you're learning any topic, starting super simplified is good, and then you slowly build on top, and then you start learning the nuance. Uh, you think you have troubles kind of with appealing scenes? I think that's okay, right? Like, because I think doing this kind of exercise, a lot of what you end up doing, because again, you're already juggling, right? You're juggling like three things here. You're juggling scale, you're juggling values. There's also compositional things, and also like shape design, right? It's not as, you know, like if these are trees, what tree shapes do you make? You know, coming up with some interesting tree shapes could take a long time. You might play around, you know, maybe you start with trees that look like this, you know, and you're like, oh, these trees aren't very interesting. And so you know, over time you start to learn to add some branches, and maybe your trees look like that. Um, you know, like it's not easy. Um, and I am sort of taking some of this stuff for granted as I'm talking. Like I'm not, you know, obviously there's a lot you could do to play around with shape design. You could do that forever. You could just play around with shapes, and I mean in some sense that's kind of what it is, right? You're just layering shapes, right? Like the one thing that I'm not doing is the form, which I've already mentioned, right? You could, you know, doing a little bit of perspective can go a long way, right? If I were to contour these shapes a little bit and just like add some contours here, suddenly it's like, okay, it gives them a little bit of form. But even without that, right, even with just shapes, you could do an entire scene with just layering values. And again, it doesn't just have to be light on dark. It could be maybe you want a shape, you know, back here, and you want it to be a little bit light. Add some light shapes, that's fine, right? Just make them in scale, whatever you want it to be. Maybe it's a fire, I don't know. Um, you know, if you want foreground shapes like tree or plants and stuff, those are just going to be, again, anytime you have like light in front of dark, that's the edge where you can make more shapes, right? If you want to add even more shapes in here, add another layer of light. Now again, you still want to follow your rules of atmospheric perspective, right? Like you don't want to go, you don't just want to add a bunch of light randomly unless there's actually going to be like lighting, and then you're going to need their surrounding values to make sense, right? But if you just take like the next value in line, so if you have like the next one here and lightly paint in here, you could add another little patch of grass, right? And you could layer that all day. Whoops. You could just keep layering and layering. Now, obviously, I do recommend, I don't think it's good to just do random values everywhere. I think unless you have a reason. And this is, I think, probably where studying does help, is once you get to this stage, and then you can start looking at real materials and sort of, there was an exercise I saw. It was, I'm afraid to Google anything because it might crash my stream again. I'm going to try it. Please don't crash my stream. Okay. So sometimes when you take an image like this, right? This is super, like, this is really hard. Like, how do you, okay, so the exercise I saw is instead of doing a study or instead of trying to copy this, because these values are everywhere, right? You have your darkest part of your painting is right here, right? Then you have like super bright stuff here and here, and some even here and here, but like it's not consistent, right? Because then you have like dark stuff. Your next darkest is like here. Like what's going on with the values, right? Like it's so chaotic. And you have little dark spots in here. Like it's very chaotic, right? This is not concise values at all, right? If I make my screen black and white, like these values are all over. Now there is a little bit of grouping and logic, and if you're, an astute observer, you'll notice there's actually a material thing where like these dark green trees are dark, but then you have this other like ground cover stuff that's lighter, and so it's right. You just have different materials, right? Then you have literally yellow trees that are brighter. Um, but anyway, the assignment that I saw, which I think is a really cool assignment, and it's also edited the hell out of, yeah, exactly. But the assignment that I saw that's cool is ignore the values, but recreate overlapping shapes to have value contrast. So, and there's no right way to do, or there's no right or wrong way, but you might say, okay, I'm going to just go the light to dark route and make sky is going to be white. Then at the next value, which is going to go down a little bit, will be this shape. Again, this is not the real values, right? And then this is in front of that, so I'm going to go a little bit darker yet and go here. And basically, you're ignoring materials, right? You're not worrying about what material is what. You're just saying, oh, this shape is now going in front of this shape. Let's add that one a little darker. And it's basically an exercise in just, trying to come up with choices. Maybe this pond, maybe you know that it's water, and so you're going to make it reflective. And maybe this one will be a little darker still. Maybe it's something like that. And then we'll go a little darker yet, and we'll go here. And this one, maybe you can fade into that one. Maybe we'll go like that. And then for this one, we'll be like this. Okay. Now, is this great? No, it's not great. But what it does, it helps you think about, because now, imagine you were like, you know what, these rocks are actually really dark. Okay, great, let's make them darker. This is more like the real scene, right? And maybe you want a grove of dark trees here. That's fine, you can add them. But you still have these overall shapes sort of underneath it, if that makes sense. So like you're kind of recreating just like an atmospheric perspective layer. And I think it's really useful to sort of re-simplify, because as you start learning to like layer in lighting and materials, that's where you can start doing, you can start basically you can get to this spot, right? But you still start here, because you still have to start somewhere. You're not just jumping straight in and picking the perfect value and the perfect material. I mean, this is a little bit, I did this very poorly, admittedly. This is not a good example, but you could have done it also, and it doesn't have to be atmospheric perspective. You could also say, these are very dark, let's make some dark shapes, right? This, as a whole, it has some light stuff, and it has some dark stuff, but it too is also very dark. So let's make it very dark. And obviously you wouldn't paint over the scene, right? But you could. And this is like a medium shape. Let's call it medium. Or maybe you see this is a bright light, and you say, you know what, let's make the bright light. And maybe you want to do like a light and shadow or something. No, I wouldn't even do that. I guess you could. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The idea is that you're trying to just separate things into like foreground, midground, background, right? You're trying to make things read clearly, I guess, in values, right? So like for example, something like this may not work because now my sky looks like it's poking through that mountain. So I need to like make this darker, right? Or I need to make it slightly lighter. It's not about having the same values as the photo. Anyway, I think that's an okay exercise because it you're interpreting the real life. You're simplifying, right? It's an exercise in simplifying. And I think a lot of environment art is that. It's just learning to look at a scene and simplify it, right? Same thing with plein air painting. If you ever go out and do plein air painting, you're just simplifying stuff. You're taking a super convoluted, messy scene with tons of little shapes and colors and everything, and you're simplifying it. Okay, I feel like I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, any questions, class? Kidding. I think you have trouble coming with that idea. Oh, I read that. But yeah, I think coming up with stuff sort of quote unquote from imagination, it really is just doing all the things at once, right? You're a little bit of a designer and you're a little bit of a um, you know, like yeah, you're your own sort of concept artist, you're your own, if there's a story, you're doing all the things, right? You have to know a lot of different topics, there's a lot of different fundamentals you're juggling. Like it's not I think people you can get hung up on any spot, and there's a lot of spots to get hung up on. So it's definitely a lot. Anyway, I'm just doodling here. Joe does it. Joe does it like breathing. I mean, no, I wouldn't say that. It's more like talking, which I'm not amazing at. I'm stumbling over my words. I'm stuttering, kinda. But there is a fluidity to it where like you can start saying one thing and you can pivot to something else, or you can elaborate on a point. It's a language, right? There's language and it's communication. If something's not clear, make it more clear by adding contrast, right? So like if you're going to add a character and using our earlier scene, let's say you had a dark shape here, right? Because maybe you just have a dark shape. Well, if the dark shape is, first of all, if the dark shape is blending into this shape, well, let's make it a little lighter so it's not blending into the foreground, right? Let's add a little layer. Well, let's use an airbrush, right? A little bit of a layer. There. Now our dark area isn't blending in to our foreground. Okay, great. Well, hold up. I wanted characters here. Well, I need the characters either darker so that they stand out, right? Or I need them lighter so that they stand out. Either way, I have to make shapes stand out, right? You can't just like, oh, I have to make them this darkness and then this darkness doesn't, like, this would be stupid. If I did this, right, if I were to take this value, which is the one that's right in front of my object, and I drag up, just like I did in my foggy forest, you can hardly even see the characters. Well, that's not good because that's not going to have the contrast I want. So what do? Maybe I bring out this light and shine a light on this character. Now there's a character here with a light. Or maybe I bring this whole light all the way over and I just make the entire character out of light. So I go like this. Boom. Character made out of light. And maybe he needs a little bit of shadow. Right? It's just very, very blobby. But like, okay, there we go. There's some characters. Maybe another character in here. But like a lot of it's literally just layering shapes. Change the rule. Well, it's not really rules. I mean, again, the rules are overlapping shapes, right? We're trying to add depth here, right? So the rules are overlapping shapes. There's nothing up. Atmospheric perspective is one of them. Remember how I had that list of 4 things, right? I had like 4 things, and I started crossing them off. You can cross any of them off. You don't always have to have atmospheric perspective in every scene, or at least not to any significant degree that you can see it, right? But if you don't, that means your other stuff has to do more, it has to do more heavy lifting, right? You could have a scene entirely atmospheric perspective and it does all of the work on its own, right? Or you could have a scene that is almost entirely, like if you had lines, right? Everything is done with perspective and linear perspective and, shapes and overlapping shapes, right? You don't have to have any atmospheric perspective in your scene at all, right? You could just have a bunch of shapes that are overlapping. And you could be like, there's a scene, right? No atmospheric perspective needed. I'm kind of using it. I am making lines. Anyway, I don't know what where I'm going with this scene. But I guess my point is that like I think the idea that because atmospheric perspective is weak, right? It's like a really weak light source. I mean, it's not a light source, but it's like a really weak lighting effect, right? And so if you have like direct sunlight in there, or you're at nighttime or something, like you're gonna have bigger effects than atmospheric perspective. And also, not every scene takes, you don't always have a ground plane, so you don't always get the privilege or the luxury, I guess, of having like, you know, like a nice path or something. A lot of times I put like these little like horizontal lines in here, which kind of emulate having like rivers or some ground plane. You don't always get that. Sometimes you just have like floating rocks, right? And you don't, So now instead of that, maybe I use this kind of thing, right? I do like perspective lines, right? They're contours, and that's going to help show the depth a little bit better, right? You're just trying to make things like, okay, you're trying to make this look like it's far away. Trying to make these things look like you're looking underneath them. And so there's a lot of that kind of thing where you're just using whatever tools you can to communicate the thing that you want to communicate. Maybe there's something here. I'm not sure what I'm drawing anymore. I'm basically using these paintings as just a giant a thing to talk about. Something so I can ramble. Maybe these are houses, buildings, and of course then there's stuff like architecture, right? You have architectural stuff, which obviously I'm just drawing like random mushroom house or something. I don't know what I'm drawing. But anyway, hope all that stuff made sense. This is so good. Thank you, Casey, for sending me by. Well, thanks for popping in. Yeah, if there's ever questions, not just from you, but from anybody, right? If there's any questions about random stuff, I'm happy to rant about it. I don't always know what people want me to talk about. This is why I'm not, Casey's the 100% certified pro streamer. I am not, unlike her. So I don't always know what people want me to talk about. Mostly I'll just ramble about stuff, but also, okay, let's do another thumbnail. This time I'm just gonna jump all around. So if you want something somewhat hidden but can be seen if you look more closely to keep the values kind of close. Yeah, exactly. So there's a really cool, I always think of it, it's a Magic the Gathering card. I don't know what it's called, so I wish I could bring it up. Exactly. So there's a Magic the Gathering card that basically has a value structure like this, where you have like an arch, like a doorway kind of, and you have like a person in the doorway. I think it's like two people, and like one is very clearly like royalty or something, like a king and their guard, right? And so you have like these people walking. I think they're like walking into the shadows or something. So it's kind of like that. And then on here, you have a scene like this. And they're very clearly walking into an alleyway, right? Or at least in the magic card. And then over here, you have like a wall. And then this wall goes like that. And then you have like a character standing here with like a knife, and they're like, you know, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how to draw characters with a knife, but you know, they're they're hiding up against the wall, kind of. You know, they're like gonna getting ready to ambush them. But like they're at first glance, you don't see them, right? Because like maybe all you see is like, you know, there's like a glint on their knife or something, right? So compositionally, or you know, it's probably I'm sure the knife is pointing at the people because it's gonna be like a compositional thing. You probably don't want the knife pointing at off the side. But yeah, so it's kind of like this, right? So you have like these silhouettes of these people. Also, they're probably not totally in. You know, I'm sure there's other stuff back here. You know, there's just like it's I don't know. It's just like some street. It's just they're in some alley, and yeah, it's like the whole composition where if you kind of squint, like pretty much all you can see is these people, and then on second read, you're like, oh, here's a character, and actually this character is like bigger and more sort of like, you know, they take up a larger amount of space than these two characters, but because the values are so close, you don't see them as easily. In fact, depending on, you know, how dark this is, you may not even be able to see it at all. But, you know, and of course you could do like a little bit, you know, you could have a little bit of lighting. Maybe you light on one side so the silhouette isn't there, but the character's still lit, right? That could be a thing. Because again, you can see them, but like they don't have the clear graphic read, right? Because they're just side lit. Whereas these characters are backlit, and so they have the nice silhouettes, so you can read them a lot better, and you can see exactly who they are and what they're doing, right? So depending on how you arrange it, um, yeah, get something like that. Anyway, so yeah, there's definitely contrast is a big thing in composition, for sure. And of course, you could put this character anywhere, right? You could put him up here, hanging, you know, lurking above. Maybe they're on a ledge, right? You could rearrange that. You could do the same composition, but like something like this, where you're looking down at a scene, right? And you have a character up here, gonna lunge down. This is all very dark, but then the focus is, you know, on these characters down here. Right? And it's like very clearly they're gonna get jumped or something. I don't know if that made sense. But anyway, now I'm gonna do a painting. I'm just gonna do some thumbnailing, but I'm not gonna stay as like step by step as I did in those. I'm gonna jump around more. Because like a lot of times when I'm painting it just for myself, I'm not really thinking about things like the values and stuff. Like if I try to stay pretty open, and so I'm not thinking like, oh, I gotta have dark in the foreground. I can just put stuff anywhere, and at some point, if I start to get close to a value structure that makes sense, I can just lean into it, if that makes sense. So like, for example, maybe I see a shape here, and I'm like, okay, this shape could be... I'm not sure yet. This could be bright. Obviously, there's a dark shape here. It could be a horse. Yeah, it could be a horse, but it could also be something else. I don't know. A lion. Well, probably not. Probably not a character. Because I'm thinking environments, right? I could. I mean, it kind of looks like an eldritch horror creature. Like weird tentacle things. Probably not wanting to do that. I don't know. I mean, maybe there is maybe not eldritch horror, but maybe there's like a temple or a shrine. I don't know. Right? Maybe there's some lights here. And then if these are lights, maybe there's, again, we're going to do a pathway here. See, like I'm already jumping around a lot and I'm using a lot of different things, but now I'm like, okay, now I've got a foreground, midground laid out. So now I'm thinking, okay, let's go in here and add a darker foreground, right? Just at least a little bit. So I'm gonna change up the color a little bit. I'm gonna go a bit more cool because we already have a lot of warm. So I'm doing a cooler foreground, also darker, right? So I'm doing darker and cooler. In this case, also more deep, more saturated. So now I have my value structure kind of in my head because after I did a lot of this stuff. Um, but maybe now I want to bring in, more contrast. So maybe there's like some lighter colors in here as well. In fact, I kind of like these blues. So maybe I bring in some more of these blues. So my values aren't super clumped, but I kind of have like I'm layering things. Maybe there's some paths going up here, like well, totems or something. Maybe this is a big tree, a giant tree thing. And because it's a giant tree thing, right? Again, I'm just sketching. I'm just making things up. But because it's a giant tree thing, maybe we get some greens, right? Maybe there's some blue greens in here. And maybe this stuff in the background is also that blue-green. So it's like a tree thing. And maybe because we have that blue from the sky, maybe we just make a blue sky. And so this is kind of the stage where I think I'm sort of taking a step back and be like, okay, what do I need to make this thing read, right? Does it read well? Maybe not yet. But yeah. And then from here, I can just start doodling. Doesn't have to look great. The blue sky. Yeah. It's literally the blue sky stage. Quite literally. Maybe I want to play around with the shapes of these. Or maybe introduce a color. In fact, sometimes I think if I get stuck here, or if I don't really know what I want to do with a painting, I'll just pivot. I'll just take a color like a glow dodge or something. And like just put in like glowy stuff. Like, oh, what if this is a portal? Or, I mean, at this stage, I could do anything. Maybe I want, some characters or something going into the distance, or some lighting. Again, I do like my paths. No idea what I'm painting. I'm just noodling. It's like a mini demo. A demo for nothing with no goal. And maybe there's like, sometimes I'll think things like I need some, stuff in the distance because I only have, I can kind of think of this as all one big shape. So like I only have a foreground. So maybe I want to, add like a layer here to break up that foreground and like, okay, now that's a foreground. Or maybe I want to add some stuff in the background to add some depth. Or maybe I add some horizontal depth, by re-adding some of those ground shapes. Don't know what I'm painting, by the way. Still haven't figured it out. But that's okay. I don't need to know what I'm painting. It does look like a big tree, which is not the most original thing I've ever done, but that's okay. Don't need it to be. If it is a big tree, though, I kind of feel like I want shapes. I don't know, looking up. We're just gonna go, again, kind of like the foggy forest thing, right? We're adding those light shapes in the background. We could also, ooh, what just happened? Thank you for the hydrate. My eyes are sore. I think I haven't blinked enough. I haven't been hydrating my eyeballs. Gotta blink those eyeballs. Get them hydrated. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing here. I know I say that a lot. Maybe we should redeem blink. Hydrate works. That's what they're. It's not really. I mean, close enough. If your eyes are dry, blink a few times. Okay. What am I doing here? I don't know. Let's play around with color a bit. Surely this can turn into something. What if I do that? Ooh, here's an idea. Okay, I've got an idea. So there's a little shape here that goes like this, and this, and this, and it kind of looks like an old broken bridge. Right? At least to me. So what if I add some form? Right? So here's this. Kind of goes back here. Or maybe it's not even a broken bridge. Maybe it's literally a bridge. I don't know. Maybe that's stupid. Does that look not right? I don't know. I'm not sure what all this foreground stuff is. I guess it doesn't really matter, but as long as we have some overlap, it should work. A little bit of a bridge. And then here. I don't know, kind of fun. Maybe this bit of a foreground. I don't know. Sometimes you can just. I feel like sometimes you can just literally just layer shapes on top of each other, and as long as you're doing things that will add depth to a scene, you can get away with a lot. Like maybe there's a shape in the foreground here that is, that's bluish color. It's like there's a little island. And like if I needed a distant horizon line, for example, I could add like just another shape back here. Carry it back here. And like now I'm kind of getting to a point where I feel like the scene kind of is making sense to me. There's like these two tree thingies, and then they're connected with the bridge, right? And then these, maybe there's, again, if I want to make it a little more clear, I can take these and like do some contour. Maybe this is where the if I wanted to detail the tree trunks, right, I would detail along these contours. Maybe there's some stuff sticking down. Branches and stuff. I don't know. Just things like that. And then the foreground, I feel like there's not enough. We don't really know what this is. But maybe there's another bridge here. Something like that, maybe. I feel like it's not too bad. And then this bridge, I don't know. I think we'll go off the page and then back on. That way we're not dragging the eye off. I feel like if we were just to put the thing here and then come around, it would look funny. But I think if we go like this, I think we can do that. And then again, our occluded areas down here, like the nooks and crannies, that can be the darkest part of the scene. I actually like there's like these little like purpley colors and different colors in here, and teals and turquoise. I think so. This is something it's like my own little rule. But whenever I have a color that I feel like I can see the color in, even if it's not technically there, but it's just like only existing in the grays, I'm allowed to take that color and crank up the saturation. It's like a highlight. So if I want to like a punch of color in here, that teal will work because I already saw it in there. It existed in the grays as like color relativity, right? But it didn't technically exist as like a saturated color. Kind of like here, right? There's some like greenish color. It's not real. It's not real green, but if I wanted to make it green, I'd be allowed because it's green enough. Now I wouldn't go full green with this because that would look bad, I think. But I like that blue-green color. And then maybe here we can start playing around with like value, right? Instead of just all one value. This looks like bridge troll territory. It kind of does. Yeah, for sure. Definitely could be some sort of troll thing over here. Definitely could be. Made out of sticks and twigs. Maybe there's some characters here. Could do our classic characters with sticks. Oh, this is too low resolution. How do I do this? Trying to make these sticks go at a different angle. Maybe they have flags. I don't know. Flags or something they're carrying. Or torches. Maybe they're not carrying flags. Maybe they're carrying torches. Maybe they be traveling. Maybe the boots be traveling. True, 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 true. Also, hi, Siren. I know you have been here, but hope you're doing well. The boots be traveling. They could be. Maybe there's torch. Maybe they're gonna go burn the the pitchforks are out. Pitchforks and torches are out. They're gonna go fight something. Doing all right. Georgie with them? Probably not. Probably not. I don't know. Georgie's on vacation indefinitely. Rip Georgie. No, I don't know. I'm sure I'll paint Georgie again. Yeah, the colors aren't super great because they're all just variations of the same thing. But I think this is where, like, once the values are working, I can pretty much come in here and just, like, add color, right? Right? Like, I could come in here and add, like, a green here, right? Obviously, it's a desaturated orange, but, like, it'll look kind of greenish. And it's the same value, so it's going to work, right? Or, I don't know, like, yeah. And maybe here, maybe there's little, I don't know, do I want to add, I don't know what I want to do in the foreground, to be honest. So now I'm just experimenting. You're glad you're here? This is nice? Oh, thanks. Yeah, I don't like that. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on in the foreground. It's the least favorite part of this image. It's kind of, sort of working. I don't know. I don't think it is working. But see, I think if I get rid of the foreground, I'm pretty sure the image wouldn't work that well. Like, we could try it. But like now there's going to be a depth issue, right? So I have to add additional things to add that depth, right? Like I could add more water lines in here. Or maybe I could do something like this where like some sticks and stuff sticking up. Maybe something like that. I don't know if that's better. Water lilies? True. Yeah. That's not a bad idea. Some little water. That's a good idea. Yeah. Just something in the foreground to help show that perspective. That's good. Yeah, water lilies are good. Little lily pads. Trying to make them in perspective. Some big ones, some small ones, some medium ones. Yeah. We could even get some different colors in here. Now, if we really wanted, we could probably possibly waitable, maybe, yeah. And if we really wanted, we could even get some lighting in here. So this is, I haven't added lighting, and I think the lighting's making this look really flat. So I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna do multiply. This is gonna look bad, but it's gonna look swampy, so it might be cool. I don't know. Actually, it may not. It may not look bad. Okay, how do I do this? I'm gonna do this in two parts. First, I'm gonna merge everything I have because my file's gonna get too big. Then I'm gonna copy this and paste it, and now I'm gonna do a. So this is a little bit of like Photoshop magic or whatever. I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna do saturation lower. I'm gonna go. Not no. What am I doing? Uh, color balance. Let's do color balance. Yellows, reds. Just making it yellower. It's not going to look good for a second. Okay. There. Now, I'm going to take this. Wait, what am I going to do? I've lost what I was doing. Okay. This and yeah, I'll add the multiply. Joe lost. I got confused with what I was doing. I was trying to think, how do I make this go through? I think I'll do it with a mask. Basically, I'm painting in this, but this stuff is gonna be warmer. So now, how do I do this? How do I mask out? I don't know. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I right click. I haven't done this in so long. Layer mask, mask outside selection, and then I just repaint it in. This cannot be the right way of doing it, but it's not bad. Basically, just where I want that light to be. I can add in that warmth. I think that works. Anyway, that's not bad. There. So yeah, like see now we have some color, right? I can just pick the color directly from here now, I think. Right, if I wanted to make this like brighter, Could add some stuff. Just painting these things, but I think now that works. Little swampy scene. Maybe there's little glyphs or like fancy. I don't know. Maybe there's paint. I guess it doesn't really look like it looks like it's glowing. It doesn't look like paint. If it was paint, it wouldn't be this bright. I don't know. It's not bad. Little blue shapes. Some over here. Anyway, so I think this type of scene works as far as just like a little sketch goes. But now we have a little bit of, we have all the things. We have the atmospheric perspective. We have shape design. We have colors. We have different values for different materials. I think we have pretty much all the parts. Probably some stuff that's not great, like some of the lighting direction or shadow shapes. I think that's probably what we don't have a lot of. But yeah, hopefully most of that was clear. Although some of that layer shenanigans was probably not very clear, because I'll be honest, I'm kind of just winging that one. I don't feel like my layer management skills are very good. Pretty much the only thing, like the only time I use that is like if I'm doing like if I want to add lighting or solidify the lighting. Like if I already have lighting but I want to make it stronger, sometimes I'll duplicate my layers. I'll shift one of them warmer and shift one of them cooler, and then I'll mask out the cool on top of the warm so that the warm will shine through where I want the light. That's kind of what I did with this one. Any of that made sense. But I think it's a nice effect. I think in real life, lily pads, water lilies are also, you typically have like reeds sticking up, right? I think. Although, I don't know if that's going to look good or not. Also, water lilies have like a thickness to them, don't they? They're not they're not just flat. So we could come in here with like, again, I'm using, this is very pixelated because the resolution's so low. Just coming in here and outlining these. I think another big thing for environments, if someone doesn't do a lot of them, I think another big thing is not trying to paint every object, right? So even in the water lilies, if you look at like this shape, these are a bunch of blobs, but I'm kind of treating them as one. I think that's another really important thing. Or like I might do like a shadow on them, but I'm basically just doing the shadow on the outside edge. So they end up merging together. Here we go. There's a little scene. That'll work. Now, I don't think this is going on our world map. It could. It's not really what I was hoping to do, though. Okay, let's see. Maybe we jump over here for a bit and paint on this. I'm getting kind of tired, but I think I'm good to go for a little bit more. Maybe I'll do like the daily Wordle, and then I'll end stream. I don't know. No, I think I do want to paint on this. I like this painting. I want to work on it more. Magic stuff. Yay. Magic stuff? What do you mean magic stuff? Wait, am I really delayed? Also, hi, Commissar Skull. Hope your doctor appointment went well. Welcome back. Yeah, so the whole time you were gone, I was not painting on this. I was painting on this. Or this one. Or different stuff. I was rambling and talking about various painting environments. The glowing columns. Yeah. Big sword. No, it's not a sword. Not a big sword. You know what? I don't think I've ever painted a giant sword. Like that stereotypical fantasy sword. I don't think I've ever actually done it in earnest. I probably added it to an image for like a, you know, like just sort of temporarily, but I don't think I've ever left it in there as like had it. I don't think I've ever painted it like a full piece with a giant sword. I might be the only fantasy landscape artist to have never done that. I feel like everybody has done that. Maybe one day. Maybe this is the scene. Maybe this is the sword. The big fantasy sword sticking in the ground. This is it. This is the time. What if we take the big sword, make them a bunch of them, and use them as a fence? Well, then it wouldn't be a big sword. It would be small swords, right? Or you mean like a giant fence? You could. Suppose. Yeah. No, I don't have anything against the big swords. It's just I've ne I think okay, I gotta ask a question because I don't know if I'm normal in this on this point. I think I am. I think this is probably a normal thing, but I don't like doing the same thing everyone else does. Like a little bit, but I also want to deviate just a tiny bit. If it feels the exact same, like if everyone's painting swords, I actually don't always want to paint swords. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't know. It's like I'm sure there's it's not always the same though, because sometimes I don't care. Sometimes I don't care if other people are doing it, but sometimes I want to do something just because it's a little bit like if it's too normal or if it's the norm, then I'm like, okay, I gotta do something slightly different. Can I share one compo I did for Siren to see? Yeah, of course. You can share your art. And like I think I do this to my detriment, right? So like sometimes there will be I mean even within my own art, right? If I find that I'm repeating myself too much in my own art, I will just try to do something that's different. Like, oh, I'm painting a lot of blue skies. Let's just not paint with blue. And actually that's how this painting came about. It's like no blue allowed. Not because blue is bad, but just because I was felt like I was doing a falling into a pattern too much. And like when I notice that I'm falling into a pattern, I definitely am because I probably already paint. People probably already think that a lot of my art looks the same. Okay, let's click it. Uh-oh, is this gonna lag me? Ooh, oh yeah, nice. Is that a giant sword in the background? I like this, Commissar. Looks good. Yeah, these things kind of did look like a giant sword. Let's get rid of some of this though. Oh no, no sword. Okay, no sword. Thanks. Even people. Also, I realize I have no music going right now. My stream struggled earlier, so I turned off the music. Trying to come in here and just add some brightness and see how that works. Still a lot of experimenting going with this painting. Like, do I want to push the brightness of like the yellows back here? I don't think I do. Maybe a little bit. Just for like an extra punch of focal point. Extra punch of focal point. Is that what I meant to say? I don't know. But yeah, just a little punch of color. Trying to make just interesting shapes back here. Maybe something laying down. Maybe just smaller shapes. Just very tiny. What about paths that light up? Okay, I have an idea. Maybe not. Maybe not. It took like it looked like three big swords in Joe's painting. I don't have big swords and hello painters. Visceral, how's it going? Howdy howdy. No big swords in my painting. These are pillars. Hold on. They're columns. You like the arrow pathway and make a hill? Oh, like going up like that? And all the way up? No, I don't know if I want the glowing pathway. Ooh, this could be a structure here too. This whole thing at one point could have been a building. Something. Some sort of structure. Actually, it's not bad. I like that. That almost feels like it's a pyramid kind of thing. Hold up. Am I cooking? Don't know if I like this shape now. The downslope of the hill and the upward line of the pathway make an the downslope of the hill and the upward line of the pathway. Like this? That's like a backwards arrow? Or this? I'm not seeing it. I mean, this makes an arrow, like in the sense of, you know, converging lines in perspective kind of thing, if that makes sense. But I don't think I'm intentionally making an arrow in another way, if that's not what you mean. Also, I don't think I like the scale here. Because this one's massive, and then these are like too small. What is this? What am I painting? I feel like this needs to be bigger. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here. But yeah, I think it'd be nice if there's some arrows in here, right? I do want things to kind of converge and point to each other. I think my scale is all goofed up here. Like, I don't think I even know what the size of stuff is. Like, if I were to put a person in here, how big are they? Like, walking distance, I feel like the person would be here, right? But then back here, are they this big? I don't actually know. This is what's wrong when you don't know what size stuff is. So here's a person. Here's a person. Here's a person. Is this right? Kinda, maybe? It's not bad. For scale. The hill that the pillar is laying on a zoomed out scale, make a downward line rather than a line going into the distance. The hill that the pillar is laying on, this one, uh, on a zoomed out scale, makes a downward line rather than a line going into the distance. Yes, I see. So this down here. You're, oh, you're saying like it's lining down in this direction. Is that what you're saying? I kind of see that. You'll just paint it. Yeah, if you want. Yeah, that works. It's okay. Yeah, you don't have to. It was funny though. Maybe these are leaning against each other. Now, I don't quite know how we get from here back here. I mean, I assume there's steps, right? So, something like that. Now, what is this? I do kind of like these because these are implying that there's like these big structures here. Old, old shapes, old ruins. Which is kind of nice. This feels like there should be a base here. Because, like, if there's ever a big structure, there should be a base. So I don't really like that. Maybe it's broken off. I don't know how that works. I don't know where these came from. I mean, generally, yeah, generally we would have, like, also, let's see, is this going back up or down? This has to be going up, right? kind of weird. Weird that we have a shape going up and then a shape going down. I don't know. I do like this. I mean, this is kind of neat. It's almost like a... I don't know. Let's play around with this a bit, though. What if we get rid of it? I say I like it and then immediately get rid of it. Just trying to think, how do I play around with the shapes and distance here? Is there something on the hill back here that kind of makes this place feel larger? I mean, I kind of like that, actually. It's not bad. Now it's like, it feels different. Gosh, I'm ruining my painting, aren't I? I'm making it less interesting. Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. Adding just some little shapes back here. I mean, it's kind of fun. Now, we could do this. I could... Sorry, I'm not very talkative here. It's not... We could do this. And bring back that light in the foreground. Because this is how it originally was, right? This foreground here. That was the original. Which I kind of like, to be honest. This feels more tidy. This is more chaotic. Is there a way to merge these two together? So this is... Man, I think... Like, the problem with this, or the one that... Not really the problem. I guess it wasn't really the problem. But the thing with this is that it didn't feel like it had a good focus. Like, we were staring into here, but then there was nothing. So I felt like I was trying to bring the focus more into here and then drag it up, which is sort of why I erased the foreground like this and made it darker so that we weren't focused there. But then it also kind of made it less dynamic and just less interesting. I don't know what to do. Oh wait, I did that too. LOL. Did what to? Made it less dynamic? Yeah. Well, I like... You can post... Can you post an image or link? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I like the lighting in here. Maybe this is all dark too. No. Okay, let's take a look. Hopefully I don't lag out. Sometimes loading things. Oh, I see. Okay, so you're saying these two make the arrow. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this was the arrow that you were making, that you were pointing. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Now, I am not sure. I know you were pointing that out, but were you saying that's good, that's bad, that's confusing? There should be. Were you saying there should be a focus here because they're pointing at that? Like there should be a character here. Is that what you were saying? Because yeah, I totally get that this is kind of where the focus is, right? Whether it's a character or some element that's design element or something. But yeah, because yeah, I think I agree with you. I agree with your assessment. I like okay. I mean, you don't have to. It's just I guess I at some point I lost what you were trying to say. Like I get that you were pointing out that there were compositional elements, but I wasn't sure what the point you were making was. I think I lost that at some point along the conversation because I it might have been the case that I was missing something that I should have had in my painting, or I should still have. Yeah, I actually had considered like, what if I just erase this like that? Not maybe not totally erased it, but just put like a hill here. I don't think I need that though. I think it's okay to have a giant mountain hill. I think that's okay. I mean, we could even go shadows here. I don't know. Is that? No, that's probably not right. It's weirdly satisfying that my subconscious likes to use subtle arrows to point to a focus. I mean, I think we all do, right? We follow edges. I think that's always a thing. Like Joe stays so still. I thought the stream disconnected. Really? I don't I like shift back and forth. Do I really? I didn't think I stay that still. Maybe. I know sometimes I don't blink, which is a problem. Forgetting to blink on stream, not ideal. Yeah, I'm not sure if I like. I mean, now that you point out how big of a shape this is, it's almost annoying. um, not because you pointed out, but just because I'm noticing it now. This is a giant shape that feels a little much. If it wasn't for the mouse movement, I would have thought I got disconnected. Oh no, that's not good. Well, and also hopefully my talking. If you can hear me, you're not disconnected. But or was I quiet? I don't know. Maybe I was quiet. When I'm so focused, I'm just like I forget to talk, and then you guys don't even know if I'm here. Feels too heavy. Yeah, it does feel a little heavy on one side. But I feel like if I get rid of it and I like if I chop it off like this, then it feels too airy. And like that makes it feel like even worse. Maybe. Also, I'm on the wrong layer. You were quiet? Gotcha. I could do something like that. It does feel pretty heavy, doesn't it? Maybe I guess maybe I could bring in shadow here. Or bring in bigger shapes with these. Probably not that. I mean, this is extreme. Probably not this, but I don't know. It's an option. The frustration of composition. Yeah, yeah, it's not too big of a deal. I like it. I like playing around with this stuff. Could go like that. I say I don't want to do that. That's just boring. This is the least exciting way to solve the problem, in my opinion. Like it's not bad. In fact, it might even look fine. But that's just boring to me. Yeah, that's not fun. That's a stupid composition. In fact, we probably could do something like this, where we extend it. Let's try that for a second. Just out of curiosity. See, that's better. Well, that may not be better for composition, but it's, in fact, that's probably worse for composition. We could extend this way though. We could go like this. The distance between the elements can balance it. But to keep it the same aspect ratio is doable but tricky. Yeah, oh, I'm sure. I mean, you could also balance it by just like rearranging a focal point, right? Like you could add like if you wanted like a little character in here or some additional storytelling or something, right? You could add just something strong enough in here that like pulls the attention, right? Like if I were to put a character here, right? Like it could work because now it's not really off balance. Like kind of is, but like not really because it's pulled here instead of over here, right? So we're pulling this element. We're weighting it now in here instead of being weighting it over here. So like I think there's ways to pull it to one side. Also, it's still a little like intense, right? Because like it's a big contrast. So like we could probably soften it up in some ways. Could probably add a little bit of contrast over here with like little occluded areas. Um, just little dark shapes in the shadows. To like just a tiny bit of weightiness to one side. Adding some more interesting things over here. I don't know. Yeah, I don't. It doesn't need to be the same aspect ratio. There's nothing about this painting that requires it to be any one particular aspect ratio. I don't know. I'm kind of just doodling on it. It's fun. It still is very something. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't need to be like a super great image or anything. What if I go back to the other one? How does that look? Yeah, it's still a little weird, isn't it? I guess we could also shift this over here. Maybe. And do like a zigzaggy thing. I don't know. I think I'm tired. I think I can't think straight. I think that's the problem. You could also do something like this. This is just like a statue. And then this is... I move the temple more away from Big Hill. On the other side, with the same aspect ratio, I feel like if we move it this way, if we move the big temp, this one that way, that would be worse, right? If unless we change, if I keep the aspect ratio wider, then I think that would be a fine solution, right? I actually also think, I mean, there are certain things I don't want to do, just mostly out of stubbornness. Like I could, for example, if we keep the aspect ratio wider, we could absolutely do this where we change this path like that. Kind of thing. Now, obviously, that doesn't look good, but we could do something like that and move this whole thing over here. So now we're just kind of like, we could do something like that. I think that would more or less solve the problem. So this would be the like there would be a focal point here. It would be all this debris and stuff. But that's a big change, and I don't really want to do that. And also, that doesn't feel like there's stairs here anymore. We've lost them. We've lost the stairs. That's okay. Yeah, something like that, kinda. I mean, it's very blobby now. It's probably even it's. I mean, it's kind of a mess, right? That's okay. Actually, this doesn't work anymore. This needs to go back here. Yeah, I think that kind of works now. I don't know. I'm not sure I like that though. I might need to sleep on it. It's been fun to noodle around though. Let's uncrop it though. Go back a bit because I kinda I mean I guess what we could do, you know what? Come to think of it, well combining solutions here. We could just do a drop off. That's literally what we could do. That's a solution. Just showing that the ruined, crumpled things. Maybe nothing down here. But I feel like that kind of solves the problem. Because now the focus is, like, the precariousness of that ledge, right? Like, this is the part of the process that sucks to work to. No, this is the fun part. Are you kidding me? Once this part's over and you're like, oh, I know exactly what it's gonna look like, that's when the fun stops. Yeah, I feel like that more or less solves the problem because it's okay that it's top heavy because that's kind of the point. Like yes, it's a dominating wall, but also we're kind of on a cliff now, right? I think that it doesn't that kind of solve the problem, maybe because like the whole point is that you have to avoid the cliff, so you would go back over here naturally. I think that works. I think it works. I don't know. I could be so tunnel vision that I'm just can't see the obvious stuff. I think it works. Kind of. I mean, because it changes it, right? Before, I feel like we kind of, we sort of our brain is like, oh wow, look at this big thing, and it's just dominating over here. Except it's a wall, so we're actually in some way pushed over here, and we're like, why is it so weird? Like, how do we get back over here without like adding stuff? It's like, well, maybe you don't. Maybe you just add a thing over here. I don't know. Yeah, I think that works. It's a bit much, maybe the way I did it. We can try to mimic some of these shapes. Now the question is, do I put this greenery up here and on these pillars? I think I like that. And then there will be little bits of white off in the distance here. Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah, maybe I'll look at it later and I'll be like, wow, what was I thinking? Here I was thinking I had a solution. Silly me. Boy, was I wrong. No, I think, but I don't know. We'll find out. It's one of those hard things. I do look at paintings after stream a lot and be like, wow, I noticed all the mistakes. Uh, it's kind of the downside of painting when you're tired. There's still something wrong over here. I don't know. I don't think. Maybe this is what's wrong. Wrong. What about this? What if we just get rid of this thing altogether? Could do that. Options. 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 What if we had a shape leaning across the way? Just boom, right in the middle. That would be stupid. What if we did this? Nope, not that. What if we did? I mean, these shapes don't need to be like that either. I mean, it would make sense that they would be leaned up against here, right? Am I on the wrong layer? Nope. Okay, what am I doing? I'm ruining my painting. Okay, I need to end. I'm tired, but I think this is an okay spot to end. Maybe these could actually be a little bit chunkier. Maybe? Feel like if I had a more, you know what's also I sometimes I feel like when I'm spinning my wheels like this, it's because I just don't I haven't like taken in enough new information of like what do I want to do, you know, like what do I like where am I going with this, what are my goals, right? Sometimes it's just like I just haven't thought enough about all the rest of it and to even know like because it's hard to make a choice when you have a million choices but you don't have any direction of what those choices are aiming towards, you know. But I do like the idea of just like a big temple up here on the hill. You know, even adding a character like you know, like a visceral, like you painted, you know, just adding a little character in here. Even something like that, it really would just add a oops. It really would add something, you know. But I don't know if we want a character here because this whole scene. This character shape is terrible. Classic stick salesman. Hold up. You get a nice stick on this dude. There. Maybe he's holding the stick. There. Classic stick salesman. And the stick can be a spear and it can point right at the scene. I don't want him to be a stick salesman. No stick salesman. I love talking everything art related. Thanks, man. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. Okay, we're just gonna plop him there for a bit. I don't know where this image is going, but it's not bad. It's kind of sort of working. Could be better. Could be worse. I'm sure. Again, I'm sure I'll look at it and immediately know how to solve some issues. All right, let's go raid somebody. Thanks for being here, everybody. I appreciate it. Next stream will be on Saturday. Ah, the caped walking sick man. See, yeah, exactly. No, I don't think he's gonna stick around, but we'll see. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. I had fun. We did a little this sketch today as well, and then we rambled. Lots of rambling. Yeah, I actually like this sketch. This sketch I think turned out good. It's not a bad one. I think yeah, I like this one. Okay. Take care. See y'all.